Chapter 211 Emperor Crystal. Chapter 211 Emperor Crystal. Chen Xiang stroked Ling Yolan's white hair and marveled over and over in his heart. He didn't expect his own sworn sister to actually possess dragon blood. Chen Xiang, when I came out I sensed something good deep within the mine. Long Shui grinned. Anything Long Shui labeled as good should definitely be something extraordinary. Chen Xiang hastily asked, "Do you want me to find it?" Long Shui said with a smug smile, "If you want to get it, you at least need to dig 100 or so zhang. Even then, that does not necessarily mean you'll be able to find it." "What is it?" Chen Xiang once again asked. After all, this was just a mine. Beside the crystal stones, what could possibly be here? Emperor Crystal. Bai Yuyu and Su Meiyao both said in unison. After Chen Xiang heard these two words, he literally jumped from shock. The Emperor Crystal was a very special and rare sentient object that had been bred in a vein, and was extremely elusive. Even in legends it has only appeared twice, and its whereabouts were completely unknown until now. The Emperor Crystal's usage mainly lied in the fact that it specialized in determining the location of ores required for making spirit weapons. If one had the Emperor Crystal in their possession, they would easily be able to find crystal stone veins, or various other ores deposits. This ability was something that transcended logical reason. It was heaven-defying. "Quickly fetch it!" Chen Xiang hastily shouted. He knew Long Shui, this little dragoness, definitely had a way to get it. Only if you give me a building foundation, Dan." Long Shui mischievously laughed. "No problem, if it is really the Emperor Crystal, I'll not only give you a building foundation, Dan, I'll also add 50 true elemental dawn." Chen Xiang very readily agreed. If he had the Emperor Crystal, it would allow him to find some rare ores without a doubt. Considering everything, those would definitely be good to help refine equipment. Long Shui transformed into a white flash, and drilled straight into the earth. Seeing this, Chen Xiang secretly clicked his tongue. At the same time something came up in his mind. "Sister Meiyao, if this little dragon can steal things, wouldn't that be great? From now on I need to treat this little girl a bit better. I need to keep her firmly around me. She is a true treasure." Prior to coming here, Chen Xiang had been planned to go to the Herb King Mountain. However, he still couldn't think of any way to make the Lu family bleed. However, if he allowed Long Shui to loot the Herb King Mountain now, not only would he earn big time, he would also be able to make most of Lu family cough up blood. Long Shui was simply a greedy person, which was the easiest kind of people to deal with. Chen Xiang just had to give her some spirit fruits or some building foundation dawn from time to time, and he could make her dead set on following you around. Chen Xiang also secretly thought so. Chen Xiang waited for a long time. Soon dawn had arrived. Only then did Long Shui emerge from the ground, holding an exquisitely carved, peach-sized crystal. "Indeed, this is the Emperor Crystal," Chen Xiang said in surprise, before he readily threw a storage pouch to Long Shui. As her divine sense seeped into the storage pouch, she found 2 building foundation dawn and 100 true elemental dawn inside. She was suddenly extremely happy, and quickly handed the Emperor Crystal over to Chen Xiang, and then ate those dawn with extreme relish. For once, she found Chen Xiang very handsome. He was so generous that he even gave her twice the promised reward. Spirit-grade equipments, brilliant-grade equipments, these are magical equipment refined by humans. However, this Emperor Crystal was naturally made by this world. Ordinarily, such things are referred to as a spirit treasure. With such a mystical usage, this Emperor Crystal is definitely a spirit treasure. You need to pour some of your blood on it," Su Meiyao explained. As Chen Xiang's blood fell on that clear Emperor Crystal, it slightly shook and emitted a soft aura. He suddenly felt some kind of mysterious connection with the Emperor Crystal, along with a strange sensation that seemed to come out of nowhere. As he closed his eyes, he could see large pieces of clear crystal stones around him, as if he was standing in the middle of an ocean. The crystal stone mine seemed to be all around him. With the help of Emperor Crystal, he could actually clearly see every piece of ore around him. Chen Xiang was excited and extremely happy in his heart. Now that he possessed the Emperor Crystal, not only would he be able to see these hidden crystal stone veins, he could also see ores that could be used for refining equipment. This Emperor Crystal had endless magical effects. This crystal stone mine is really big. Chen Xiang grabbed that Emperor Crystal and closed his eyes. Once again, seas of crystal stones appeared around him. These crystal stones not only had a large amount of spirit qi inside, it was also the currency in circulation in the martial world. There were many other usages as well. Chen Xiang had been cautious as not to awake Ling Yulan. These past 2 months she had been very tired, now only was she able to sleep like a baby. Besides, she was also refining the earth core divine fruit's energy, which made her sink into an even deeper sleep. Although Long Shui was gluttonous, she had just eaten a building foundation dan and 10 true elemental dawn. When Chen Xiang saw her release a small cute burp, he whispered, "Little dragon, why didn't you stayed underground for a little longer? Wouldn't it be even more easier to get those crystal stone?" "Of course I can, but I can't eat those things. That being said, there's still good stuff." Long Shui replied with some irritation. Chen Xiang lightly caressed her cheeks, smiled and said, "You can't eat them, but they can be exchanged for many other things that you can. You little dolt, why do always act like an idiot? Go grab some of them, and I'll help you exchange them for some things to eat." Long Shui shook her head and said, "These crystal stones are scattered all around the place. Even after spending a lot of time, I can only fetch a little bit of it, completely not efficient." Chen Xiang said, "Only grab high-quality crystal stones. I'll guide you, specifically grab the top-grade crystal stone." Top-grade and high-grade crystal stones were not in circulation because they were very rare. Generally, they were used in formations and arrays as their quant. 1. Tai was very small, however, the spirit qi in them was in an extremely large quant. 1. Tai, not to mention they were also worth a lot. A high-grade crystal stone could be exchanged for 100 middle-grade crystal stones, while a top-grade one for 10,000 middle-grade crystal stones. The top-grade crystal stone was generally deep inside the vein, and in a very meager amount. Even if one had the vein, the chance of finding it was extremely minuscule. However, with the help of the Emperor Crystal, Chen Xiang was clearly able to see there was a relatively large top-grade crystal stone in this vein. "Good," Long Shui promised, and Chen Xiang immediately described her the location in detail and made her dive down towards it. This place was already very deep, yet the crystal stones here were very little. Chen Xiang guessed that the energy had all been absorbed by the top-grade crystal stone. After 1 hour or so pass, said Long Shui finally came back. Long Shui took out a column-like stone glittering in white light from her storage equipment. This was the top-grade crystal stone, with an incomparably rich spirit qi. This chunk of top-grade crystal stone was as big as someone's thigh. Chen Xiang hastily grabbed it, and stored it inside his storage pouch. Afterwards, he once again gave a building foundation dan to Long Shui, making this little girl so extremely happy her mouth was bent with smile. Chen Xiang estimated this top-grade crystal could be cut into more than 1,000 regular pieces. In short, this single was actually equivalent to 10 million crystal stones. He had once again earned a great fortune. Chen Xiang laid on the bed until noon. Ling Yulan remained beside him, still wrapped around his waist and fast asleep. Chen Xiang didn't want to wake her up, so continued to stay still. A cold qi suddenly disturbed them, as Ling Yulan was fiercely awakened. She saw Chen Xiang beside her, and immediately thought of herself sleeping with Chen Xiang for an entire night. She could not help but blush in shame. "Brother!" Ling Yulan had not even finished her sentence before Chen Xiang said in a serious tone, "Someone's here, and this person is very strong. This cold qi is actually so frightening." Leng Yulan giggled. Brother, you do not need to be afraid, it's my Dean. From Xianxia World. Chapter 212, Dual Ident. I. Chapter 212, Dual Ident. 1. Tai Ling Yulan tidied up her dress, then put on that red armor of hers. While thinking of last night when she was wearing so little, and went to sleep with Chen Xiang, she slightly lowered her head as her whole face turned red. She didn't dare to look at Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang originally thought the Dean of the Icewind Valley was mysterious like the Dean of Danxiang Taoyuan. She would never appear in public. However, contrary to his expectations, the Dean actually came here in person, and this caused him and Leng Yulan to both be somewhat surprised. In the end, why did your Dean come here? Chen Xiang left the room, following Leng Yulan. At this point, he suddenly felt a little cold, because the Dean continued to release an oppressive cold qi. These powerful figures enjoy acting like this. Not only would this act as showing off, it would also scare others, not to mention it could also play a deterrent role. Through several Pa's sages, Chen Xiang and the others arrived in a hall. Dan Yuan and the other two true martial realm disciples were also here. Their body was slightly trembling. The walls of this hall were completely covered in frost, and in the seat of honor was a female wearing a black robe, her face covered in white muslin. Although she was wearing a gown, it still could not hide her graceful figure. This female was exactly the Dean of the Icewind Valley. Seeing the Dean, Chen Xiang was even more determined that this Dean and Elder Dan were same. They definitely had some kind of secret which they can't allow others to know, otherwise they would not obscure even their eyes with white light. Although he could not see the Dean's eyes, Chen Xiang was pretty sure the Dean was staring at him. This made him feel scared. Are you Chen Xiang? Not bad. The Dean's voice was devoid of any emotions, cold as ice. Anyone who heard it would feel completely scared. If the Dean appeared at night, even if she didn't release that oppressive cold qi, she could still scare anyone to death. Dan Yuan and the others were all standing, they didn't dare to sit. The Icewind Valley's Dean suddenly appeared, and even in their dreams they have not thought of this. However, it also put them at ease. They reckoned that the Icewind Valley's Dean would definitely act and intervene in the matter. Chen Xiang was just about to salute, however. He suddenly heard Long Xue's exclaim, "Isn't this Sister Menger? It must be her, I'm not mistaken. If you don't believe me, you simply have to touch her body. She has fused with the Vermilion Bird Tender Thread, that is the Vermilion Bird divine weapon you have awakened, and it must still have some connection with you." Chen Xiang was petrified. The Icewind Valley's Dean was actually the Empress of the divine weapon Heavenly Empire. Didn't the Empress use fire? However, the Icewind Valley's Dean has such a powerful ice-cold true qi. So to say, she knew that you might recognize her, that's why she intentionally released cold qi, in order to avoid you sensing the Vermilion Bird Tender Thread. Su Meiyao was also extremely surprised. It seems that this woman is same as your sister. Both of them have the fire and ice vein, and from the cold qi she's releasing, she must have at least fire and ice heavenly vein. By you said. At the time when Leng Yulan went to the extreme martial sect, it was precisely Elder Dan who handed over Leng Yulan to the Icewind Valley's Dean. From this, it was clear that both of them had pretty good relations. She is the Empress of the divine weapon Heavenly Empire, and at the same time, she is also the mysterious Dean of the Icewind Valley. This woman is marvelous. Su Meiyao exclaimed. Chen Xiang's state of mind, although it was like a turbulent sea, there was still no change in his expression as he politely said, "Brat Chen Xiang respectfully greets the Dean." "No need to be overly courteous," the Dean coldly said, seeing her being so pretentious. Chen Xiang secretly had a good laugh in his heart. He very much wanted to see what kind of expression would she have when he exposed her. At this moment, the Dean stood up and came in front of Chen Xiang and coldly asked, "Why do you have so much scent on you? This is Yolan's. Were you last night together?" Chen Xiang and Ling Yolan's were suddenly petrified. Dan Yuan and others could not help but be startled, however, they were very soon at ease. Lung Yulan and Chen Xiang were a perfect match, and although Chen Xiang had received her as his sworn sister at the surface, this kind of means were fairly common, and everyone's thoughts could not help but wander. Lung Yulan was completely embarrassed. Said, the blush on her face reached up to her ears, and now she didn't have that previous domineering bearing, she was truly acting like a girl. Chen Xiang knew that the dean was Lu Menger, that was why he was currently extremely calm. He slightly smiled and said, last night, she and I slept together, we have not seen each other for many years, while chatting with her we fell asleep, we are brother and sisters, there is no problem. Humph, what's next? Chen Xiang, I would like to have a good talk with you alone. The dean angrily shouted. From her body, a slaughter chi broke out however, what made her even more surprised was that Chen Xiang was still composed, there was not even a single trace of fear on his face. She could not help but admire Chen Xiang's state of mind. Dean, we really didn't do anything these past 2 months. You don't need to speak anymore, wait here for me. Chen Xiang, along with the dean, came to a stone room. In his heart, he was elated. Although he didn't know why the dean sought him alone to talk, he could expose her here without any scruples. With both hands behind her back, the dean looked at some murals on the wall while Chen Xiang stood behind her. Chen Xiang, you have big guts. You actually dared to touch a disciple of my Icewind Valley, I advise you. She failed to continue her speech as Chen Xiang suddenly interrupted her. With a mischievous laugh, Chen Xiang said, Sister Menger, you have been well since our last meeting. The dean's tender body suddenly trembled however, she suddenly got angry as she shouted, What are you saying? Don't interrupt me. Suddenly, Long Shui posed as Chen Xiang and spoke with a sinister laughter. Sister Menger, I've already seen the snow-white rabbits on your chest, you don't need to pretend anymore. Chen Xiang's words once again made the dean's body quiver. She turned around and tenderly shouted, Don't ever speak of this again, and you're not allowed to talk about this with others. Chen Xiang didn't expect Long Shui to actually be so vicious. She directly poked Lu Menger's sore spot however, he also didn't blame Long Shui. Hey, however, I felt Elder Dan's rabbits were a little bigger than yours, a bit wider too. Chen Xiang continued to laugh, and Lu Menger, who was putting on airs just a moment ago, was now completely speechless. Lu Menger softly harumphed as she took her muslin off, revealing her elegant and peerless face. Looking at her mature, tender and beautiful face, Chen Xiang couldn't help but start laughing in a mocking tone. Humph! Lu Menger stamped her foot and said in a tender voice, Elder Dan will never let you see her figure. How do you know hers are bigger than mine? Wider than mine? Did she let you have a look? Previously, she was a dean capable of releasing an oppressive cold chi, but now she was like an angry little girl. She would only complete forfeit that aloof-like imposing manner and majestic aura of hers in front of Chen Xiang. She indeed let me have a glance. Chen Xiang sat on the chair with his legs crossed, a proud grin was written on his face. Lu Menger was exposed by Chen Xiang, and in her heart, she was ashamed and furious. However, she also didn't have any way to grab a hold of Chen Xiang. With a soft snort, she said, Nonsense, which woman would casually allow others to look there? Chen Xiang happily laughed and said, Sister Menger, didn't you let me have a look? At that time I felt very shy. Lu Menger nibbled her lips and indignantly looked at Chen Xiang as two charming blush surfaced on her cheeks. This different kind of fascinating beauty made Chen Xiang praise over and over in his heart. Right, Sister Menger, you seem to be very much concerned about who has bigger and whiter rabbits. Chen Xiang laughed even more happily, while on the other hand, Lu Menger tenderly snorted again and again in anger. Chen Xiang, you know that I can use my true qi. If you bully me again, I will not let it slide. Lu Menger rebuked with a pout, looking extremely attractive, once again making Chen Xiang absent-minded. Chapter 213, The Divine Weapon Sect and the Icewind Valley. Chapter 213, The Divine Weapon Sect and the Icewind Valley. Chen Xiang scratched his head, laughed and said, "I'd like to take a look how you won't let me slide." While speaking, Chen Xiang unscrupulously pointed at Lu Menger's voluptuous rabbit. Lu Menger angrily stomped her lotus-like foot and tenderly snorted. She indeed didn't have any way to grab a hold of Chen Xiang. She found herself not being able to act ruthlessly against Chen Xiang. She had lived for so long, and it was only now that she had encountered such a situation. Chen Xiang rubbed his chin and said, "Sister Menger, aren't you just jealous? Actually, you are forbidding me to get close to Yulan. Hey, in the end, what is in your heart? You yourself don't have any good intentions. On the surface, you have taken her as your sister, but now you—" "Humph. Lu Menger softly said. "Sister Menger, you're thinking too much." Chen Xiang laughed. Lu Menger sat on a chair beside Chen Xiang and seriously said, "Yulan, this girl is very wild. If she follows you, the mess she will create will be no less than yours. She and you are very different. She needs to cultivate with calm heart, otherwise in a few years she will not be able to survive." "In a few years? What is going to happen?" Chen Xiang asked while pretending to be surprised. He had already guessed that it was about the great battle of the three realms. Indeed, Lu Menger spoke of the very same matter with a very solemn look. According to words pious, said down by the founder of the Divine Weapon Sect a long time ago, in a few years, a catastrophe will befall on the world. Currently, not only your extreme martial sect is doing preparation, all of the factions of the Qinwu mainland are doing the same. Even those devil path sects are starting to H the resources. That's why don't bother Yulan. Her foundation is very good. In a few years she will certainly have decent strength, and she will be able to survive under the catastrophe. Chen Xiang nodded his head as he took out 3 pieces of the Earth Core Divine Fruit and gave it to Lu Menger. After Lu Menger saw this, her pretty eyes suddenly glittered intermittently. She could see that these fruits were very valuable. "1 piece for you, 2 for Xianxian. Don't eat now, wait till you go back before you eat it." "Why only a piece for me? Unfair," Lu Menger said with a tender snort. Chen Xiang looked at Lu Menger's chest, mischievously laughed and said, "Xianxian is my wife, of course I'm going to be biased. Besides, you're not even my girlfriend. The only reason I gave you 1 piece is completely because I've seen your beautiful rabbits, ha." Lu Menger's face turned red again as she said in a soft voice, "I already said that you can't mention it again." While speaking, she stretched out her jade-like hands like a lightning bolt, knocked on Chen Xiang's head, striking it very lightly. But in her heart she was quite reluctant to attack. After Lu Menger received the 3 pieces of the Earth Core Divine Fruit, Chen Xiang once again laughed and said, "Don't steal and eat, I'll ask Xianxian." "Don't you trust me?" Lu Menger said with a soft snort. "I'm your wife's teacher, you're being rude to me again and again. I haven't even said a word to you." Chen Xiang pursed his lips and retorted, "After all the things I've done, am I still treated as an outsider? Didn't I help you turn that piece of ribbon on your chest into a divine weapon?" Speaking of the vermilion bird tender thread, Lu Menger indeed felt very grateful to Chen Xiang. It had now turned into her own divine weapon. Now that it was connected with her blood and flesh, she felt a lot stronger now. Chen Xiang asked, "Sister Menger, what is your relation with Elder Dan? Why are you dressed up as the Icewind Valley's dean?" "I have nothing to do with her. From the ancient times, the Icewind Valley's dean has always been like this. It is also under the control of the Divine Weapon Sect's dean. I've changed the Divine Weapon Sect into the Divine Weapon Heavenly Empire for better management, and it also allows me to have some time to stay in the Icewind Valley." Lu Menger replied. Now that Chen Xiang have seen through her, she no longer kept her facade. For Chen Xiang, she had a kind of indescribable trust. Perhaps it was because she knew Chen Xiang had a lot of secrets, and Chen Xiang was also the same. He too trusted Lu Menger. Aren't you tired of running back and forth? After knowing the secrets of the Divine Weapon Sect and the Icewind Valley, Chen Xiang was secretly shocked. There is an ancient teleportation array between the Icewind Valley and the Divine Weapon Heavenly Empire. It only needs some crystal stones to activate the array, and I can come and go in the blink of an eye to the Divine Weapon Heavenly Empire. Don't even speak of this to anyone else. Lu Menger exhorted. I know, I'm starting to wonder if Elder Dan also has another idea. 1. Tai, maybe she is the dean of Danxiang Taoyuan. Chen Xiang rubbed his chin while pondering deeply. Lu Menger frowned and said, I also have the very same suspicion. Honestly, the dean of the Danxiang Taoyuan is as mysterious as my Icewind Valley's Dean Iden. 1 Tai. Last time I said my alchemy techniques are taught by the Danxiang Taoyuan's dean, she, at that time, was pretty certain I was not speaking the truth. Chen Xiang said, It seems that after I return, I have to ask her. Lu Menger was slightly shocked, and after a while, she asked, Your alchemy techniques, aren't they taught to you by Elder Dan? Chen Xiang smiled and said, Nope, it's someone else, this is my confidential secret. Humph, right, you seem to have pretty good relation with Elder Dan? Before you've said you've seen her. Lu Menger, at this moment, couldn't speak any further. She suddenly found herself very intrigued about this matter. Fooled you, ha ha. Chen Xiang started laughing. Lu Menger gritted her teeth and said, You quickly return to the extreme martial sect. The Devil Path sect's guys will not sit still. Several big sects are squeezed in just one province, they are lacking resources, and in order to cope with the oncoming storm, they are now plundering the resources everywhere. The matter here, just leave it to me. And, thanks a lot, Sister Menger. Chen Xiang smiled and said. Lu Menger angrily said, You yourself have said a moment ago that I shouldn't treat you as an outsider. The Devil Path sect and the Righteous sect might be in conflict, and you ought to be careful. Don't wander around. And, from now on, you cannot take Yulan to wander everywhere. Don't just think about yourself, you have to think for her too. Also, don't go womanizing everywhere. You already have Yulan and Xianxian. Aren't these two girls enough for you? In Lu Menger's eyes, Ling Yulan had already become Chen Xiang's woman, even if their current relations Hi+P was that of brother and sister. Chen Xiang pursed his lips and said, Like this together with you now, doesn't it count as womanizing? Of course it doesn't. You stinking brat is truly. Humph. Lu Menger was speechless. As long as she was with Chen Xiang, her pace would always get swept, and she would always have to suffer a loss. Hey, Xianxian and Yulan, although both are very close to me, I haven't seen their rabbits, but Sister Menger. Ha ha. Chen Xiang finished speaking and quickly ran out of the stone room. He only heard Lu Menger curse again and again. Lu Menger hastily covered her face with the mask and chased Chen Xiang. She arrived behind Chen Xiang and twisted his arm for a while. Afterwards, she said in a low voice, Don't tell Yulan about my true Iden. 1 Tai. Tielin. Last time we used muslin on Lu Menger's face, actually it should be mask, sorry for the mistake. Give me a kiss, I'll promise you. Chen Xiang mischievously laughed and said, Smelly brat, one day I'll make you look good. Lu Menger gritted her teeth and said. Arriving at the hall, Ling Yulan quickly walked beside Chen Xiang. After seeing the grin on Chen Xiang's face, she heaved a deep sigh. At this time, Lu Menger once again released the cold qi, and compared to before, it was even colder. It was evident that she was angry. Yulan, quickly return to the Icewind Valley, there are important things to announce. Lu Menger coldly said. Chapter 2:14 Ungrateful. Chapter 2:14 Ungrateful. I finally had the time to do the sponsored chapter, and I believe that I have almost covered all the chapters missed this month. This chapter is sponsored by Zeke, Tujin Li and Michael Lo. Thank for your support. Dean. Lung Yulan was somewhat reluctant. She came to Chen Xiang and said, "Brother, it seems I can't accompany you to wander the world, however, there will be opportunities." Chen Xiang touched those beautiful and soft white hair of hers and hugged her as he smiled and said, "You have to cultivate with all your efforts and elevate your strength. Next time we meet, I'll definitely test your strength." Ling Yulan nodded her head. At this moment, Chen Xiang moved his face closer to her cheeks and whispered in her ear, "Yulan, if the dean dares to be violent to you, you just have to say rabbits, and she will definitely not dare to do anything to you." Rabbits? Ling Yulan felt doubtful, however, she still nodded her head. Lu Menger was a Nirvana realm martial artist, and obviously, she heard what Chen Xiang spoke. Her tender body slightly trembled in anger, she secretly clenched her teeth. Xian Xian was her only disciple, and was also Chen Xiang's wife. Besides, Ling Yulan could also be counted as her disciple. Although she was Chen Xiang's sworn sister, but now looking at it closely, their relations Hi+P was not that simple. "Leave the things here to me. I'm also friends with Gu Dongchen, this is just a little bit of work for me," Lu Menger said. Although she and Chen Xiang have only met for a very short while, Ling Yulan was still very happy. Although she was still somewhat reluctant to part, she was completely satisfied. With a sweet smile on her face, she followed Lu Menger and left. This made Lu Menger somewhat surprised. She knew Ling Yulan was usually cold, stu. R. dy, overbearing and wild, but now it looks like she also had emotions like ordinary girls. At this moment she couldn't help but think about the time she spent together with Chen Xiang. Wasn't it also same? Thinking of the various things that happened with Chen Xiang, her face turned slightly red, and in her heart, complex feelings were roused. After Lu Menger left with Ling Yulan, Chen Xiang continued to stay here, waiting for Dan Yuan to completely recover. Only after that could he leave without qualms. After a few days, the Icewind Valley really sent someone, although there were only 20, but all of these 20 were in the true martial realm. After the mine was safe, Chen Xiang said goodbye to Dan Yuan and backtracked to the extreme martial sect. While Chen Xiang was flying, he was also thinking how to deal with Elder Tan's collusion with the Lu family and the Devil Path sect. He must get rid of this dangerous character. 6 days said, Chen Xiang was currently in the Taoyuan province, flying within the clouds. Because he could not see the beautiful scenery below, he was extremely bored. Just as he wanted to fly lower for some time, a powerful qi suddenly shot into the sky, scattering a large number of clouds. This made him astonished. After paying a close attention, he heard sounds of fighting, and to his surprise, someone was fighting below. Chen Xiang hid above the clouds and flew to a remote place. He landed on a high mountain and observed the ongoing battle, only to see many black-robed people besieging a team of white-robed people. Aren't they the disciples of the Danxiang Taoyuan? Are those black-robed people Devil Path martial artists? Chen Xiang said with uncertainty. He glided down from the top of that high mountain and took out a sword. Those black-robed people were holding bizarre weapons, and their true qi was also very bizarre and evil. After getting closer, Chen Xiang was certain that they were Devil Path martial artists. Not only were they attacking the disciples of Danxiang Taoyuan, there were also the true martial sects and the beast martial sect's disciples. The extreme martial sect always had very good relations with the Danxiang Taoyuan. They never had any kind of conflict. Obviously, Chen Xiang was going to save them since they were currently in a very unfavorable situation. They were surrounded by many Devil Path martial artists, and those Devil Path martial artists were stronger than them. There are actually 2/3 level of the true martial realm martial artists, and it seems the Devil Path disciples are really desperate. Chen Xiang took out the Azure Dragon slaughtering Devil Blade. If he didn't use this divine blade, he could not easily resolve this. Besides, he also had to be wary of those true martial sects and the beast martial sect's disciples. As he poured the Azure Dragon True Chi into the Azure Dragon slaughtering devil blade, a suffocating aura suddenly flowed out. Chen Xiang brandished this domineering broadsword and rushed into the crowd, slashed down a blade strike, and drew an azure bright arc form, which emitted xiao sounds. This one strike instantly beheaded 10 10th level mortal martial realm martial artists. Chen Xiang immediately released a chi screen. This was the Black Tortoise Luo Tian cover. With this, he could have a very solid defense. Along with this invisible chi cover, those lacking in strength could not approach him. They would all feel as if they were subjected to the impact of tyrannical waves. The Danxiang Taoyuan's disciples, after seeing someone came to help, immediately discovered that the weapon their savior used was somewhat familiar to them. They realized that it was the treasured weapon used by Chen Xiang they had heard of, making them feel relieved. When Chen Xiang had arrived, he neatly and quickly beheaded tens of 10th level mortal martial realm martial artists. Chen Xiang's slaughtering heart started beating, absorbing a large number of vicious qi, and releasing an intense slaughter qi continuously at the same time, scaring the heart and guts of those devil path martial artists, as if they have encountered a devil God incarnate. Chen Xiang's blade was like a thunderbolt that madly danced, killing off those devil path martial artists as they suffered cruce. Hi+ing defeat, blasting them into pieces. In blink of an eye, only 2/3 level true martial realm devil path martial artists were left. Chen Xiang, our transforming bone clan will not let you off, a single-eyed man said while blasting a palm at the tall and thin young man beside him. The palm landed on that thin body with a frightening force, making the tall and thin young man flew towards Chen Xiang. While letting out aggrieved screams, his body turned into poisonous black water and spattered towards Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang just stepped sideways and dodged. He didn't expect that the devil path martial artist would actually be so ruthless, sacrificing his own companion to escape. That single-eyed man thought he could delay Chen Xiang for a while, which would allow him to quickly escape. However, before he could run too far, he suddenly felt a suffocating pressure engulfing his body from behind. Chen Xiang, while chasing that single-eyed man, waved the Azure Dragon slaughtering devil blade. With a fierce blade strike chopping downwards, an explosive sound burst out, and that single-eyed man was smashed into pieces. The Danxiang Taoyuans, the true martial sects and the beast martial sects disciples, after seeing this, could not help but Hi+ver. Just a few moments ago, they had fallen into a bitter struggle. If it continued to go on like that, they would have definitely been annihilated. However, they had not expected Chen Xiang to appear, and alone, he had actually beheaded all those transforming Bone Clan's disciples. Is this the strength of the extreme martial sect youngest and strongest martial artist ever? Worth 10 million crystal stones, Chen Xiang. A Danxiang Taoyuan's disciple exclaimed. It sure looks like. Although his look seemed to be very different, that broadsword is exactly the one I saw on the wanted poster. Another man said. While the Danxiang Taoyuan's disciples were feeling grateful, the true marital sex and beast martial sex disciples were like bees Hi+ing ahead, holding their weapons with a greedy look. They believed that with so many people, they could certainly grab a hold of Chen Xiang, and at that time, they could obtain the 10 million crystal stones along with the treasured blade in Chen Xiang's hand. Ungrateful guys, stop them. A Danxiang Taoyuan's middle-aged man shouted. Holding a long spear, he flew over and didn't hesitate to stab the true martial sect's disciples Hi+ing towards Chen Xiang to death. After seeing the skillful display of their leader, the Danxiang Taoyuan's disciples, one by one, also rushed and started fighting against the true martial sects and the beast martial sect's disciples. Danxiang Taoyuan senior and junior brothers, all of you come behind me, Chen Xiang shouted. He had a completely solemn and cold expression on his face. Just a moment ago, he had saved the true martial sects and the beast martial sect's disciples, but not only were they ungrateful, they dared to actually attack him. Chapter 2:15 Act First, Report Later. Chapter 2:15 Act First, Report Later. After the Danxiang Taoyuan's disciples heard Chen Xiang's shout, they immediately flew over. Although they didn't know what Chen Xiang was planning to do, they could figure out he was very impatient from his voice. The true martial sects and the beast martial sects disciples didn't know what to do after seeing Danxiang Taoyuan's disciples siding with Chen Xiang. Originally, they thought that the Danxiang Taoyuan's disciples would attack Chen Xiang just like them. Humph, even if I saved a dog, that dog would be wagging its tail towards me. However, you lot don't even give a word of thanks and even attack me, you're all worse than dogs. Chen Xiang angrily cursed. So what? A true martial sect disciple who was ignorant of the immensity of heaven and earth shouted. He thought that with so many people on their side, they had already won. Besides, there were also several true martial realm disciples on their side. A sneer appeared on Chen Xiang's face, as raging flames burst out from his body. Afterwards, he flew over to the disciples of the two sects left in front of him. While he flew towards them, a pair of enormous, vermilion bird fire wings appeared on his back. At this moment, the wings on Chen Xiang's back was very similar to an actual vermilion bird's wings. While those fire wings grew larger and larger, he flew towards those two sects' disciples. In few seconds, Chen Xiang ruthlessly struck that group like a large bird of prey. That group of disciples had no time to react before they were struck by the huge fire wings released by Chen Xiang. After he pierced through the crowd, the ground was still aflame, long after those disciples had been entirely burned to ashes. This opened the outlook of the Danxiang Taoyuan's disciples. With just one charge, tens of disciples from two major sects were burned to ashes in the blink of an eye. How absolutely frightening this strength was! It was not wrong to call Chen Xiang the youngest and strongest martial artist in the history of the extreme martial sect. Friends of Danxiang Taoyuan, I would like to return the extreme martial sect as soon as possible, so I can't accompany you to the fragrant city. Maybe next time. Chen Xiang said with a bright laugh. He released that pair of frightening, vermilion bird fire wings once again and flew into the sky. His figure disappeared into the white clouds in a matter of seconds. It seems that those rumors discredited Chen Xiang. He is not a bad guy at all. One man said. Exactly, he has just offended far too many people. If the opportunity presents itself, I'll definitely drink 2 cups with him. Let's return as soon as possible. The Devil Path guys are getting more and more rampant. Chen Xiang returned to the extreme martial sect around the evening time, and he immediately went to find Elder Tan. Even though it was pretty late into the evening, Chen Xiang was still warmly received by Elder Tan. Seeing Chen Xiang came back safely, Elder Tan was extremely surprised in his heart. However, his old face was filled with warm smile. It seems the issues have been resolved. Chen Xiang just nodded his head, smiled and said, "It was kind of easy. Thanks for arranging such an easy mission, Elder Tan. Even the mission given to me was such a high-ranked mission. To be specific, a level 6 mission. I just had to travel for a bit and easily solved it." Elder Tan felt extremely doubtful in his heart, because he knew an ambush from a high-level martial artist was waiting for Chen Xiang. But even now, Elder Tan has yet to receive any news from the Frozen Sword City. That's good. Elder Tan smiled and said. Chen Xiang's complexion suddenly turned serious as he spoke. Elder Tan, during this trip I obtained a good item, but I don't know whether I should turn it in or not? Oh. Elder Tan felt somewhat doubtful. After all, if Chen Xiang got something, then why would he still speak about it? I know it's something marvelous, but I just can't seem to tell what it is. Elder Tan has seen and experienced many things. Can you help me identify it? Chen Xiang asked in a low tone, and took out a fist-sized of top-grade crystal stone, and handed it to Elder Tan. Seeing the stone exuding white light, and that kind of impactful spirit chi in it, Elder Tan immediately recognized it was top-grade crystal stone. This is not top-grade crystal stone Elder Tan. Use your divine sense to carefully probe it, and you will experience a bizarre feeling. I think this might be the Emperor Crystal. I stole it from a relatively strong Devil Path martial artist, who had entered deep into the extreme martial sect's mine. Chen Xiang explained. Emperor Crystal. After Elder Tan heard these two words, he was stunned for a while before he immediately rejoiced and injected his divine sense completely into it. Not to mention the Emperor Crystal, even such a large piece of top-grade crystal was not so easy to see. Yet now it was delivered in his hands by Chen Xiang. With this fact alone, any shred of doubt Elder Tan held towards Chen Xiang's actions was completely removed. After Elder Tan poured all his divine sense into the Emperor Crystal, Chen Xiang shouted to Long Shui with his divine sense, "Little dragon, I need to borrow your power." "Okay." Long Shui immediately agreed. Chen Xiang quietly sneaked behind Elder Tan, and immediately took out the Azure Dragon slaughtering Devil Blade. The instant it came out, he poured his complete universe true chi and the borrowed power from Long Shui into the blade, and cleaved downwards towards Elder Tan. Elder Tan suddenly felt a terrifying power approaching him. He tried to dodge away, but fell somewhat short. That blade, weighing millions of genes, landed squarely on Elder Tan, cleaving him into two. Regarding Elder Tan, Chen Xiang didn't plan to tell Gu Dongchen and others from the get-go. Chen Xiang would act first, then report later, lest Elder Tan became aware of his incoming doom and try to escape. Afterwards, Chen Xiang headed to the extreme martial mysterious realm from Elder Tan's house. Along the way, Chen Xiang encountered Wu Kaming and reported to him what happened. He also took out those two maps as evidence, and handed it over to Wu Kaming. After Wu Kaming came to learn about this incident, he was extremely furious. What the hell is happening in the extreme martial sect? One after another, traitors keep popping up. About the mine matter, the Dean and I simply didn't know anything, or else we would have not let you go alone. Anything related to the mine has always been managed by Tan Feng. I didn't expect for him to actually hide it from me. Let's go, we will go find Tan Feng, Wu Kaming said. But there is only his corpse left. Chen Xiang enthusiastically smiled. Wu Kaming was startled for a while before saying, "Impossible." While speaking, both of them walked towards Tan Feng's residence. It didn't take too long for them to arrive. After seeing Tan Feng's corpse cut into two by Chen Xiang, with almost negligent amount of blood scattered, Wu Kaming could only heave a sigh. He began to suspect whether Chen Xiang entered the extreme state or not. He actually had the ability to behead two elders. "You leave and rest first. The Icewind Valley's Dean has taken over the matter of Frozen Sword City. We don't need to worry about it. Leave the things here for me to clean up. I'll go talk to the Dean about it later," Wu Kaming said. At this moment, he was feeling rather down because Lu Shang and Tan Feng were personally groomed by Wu Kaming. He had even made them sit in the elder positions, but had not expected things to turn out like this. Chen Xiang went to find Yun Xiaodao and the others, but learned that they all went out to do missions. Before, they hated to deal these kinds of things, but now they had no alternative but to complete the missions because the rewards were irresistible. After Chen Xiang returned to his own small abode in the extreme Dan King courtyard, he immediately went to his backyard, and raised his head to look at the azure profound tree, which had already bore 39 fruits. Currently, Elder Dan was sitting under the tree, while looking at the azure profound flower exuding an azure aura in her hand. "Ha ha, these fruits are very beautiful, but none of them are yours," Chen Xiang teased. Chapter 216 4 Devil Techniques. Chapter 216 4 Devil Techniques. Elder Dan stood up and said, "I have no shortage of building foundation dawn, you refine them yourself and enjoy." Chen Xiang smiled and said, "That's great. I need a bunch of building foundation dawn, little girl, help me gather the materials." 39 azure profound fruits meant he would need to gather 39 set of herbs. He had no shortage of thousand vein fruits, metal spirit fruits, auxiliary herbs and monster cores. In the black tortoise mysterious realm, he had obtained enough refining materials for 800 building foundation dawn. He only asked to see whether Elder Dan really had no shortage of the building foundation dawn materials or not. TLN, we would be using monster cores instead of monster dawn. Elder Dan shook her head. Last time, I did everything in my power to gather the herbs. It's not like I don't want to help you, but both the metal spirit fruit and the thousand vein fruit are both very scarce at the moment. Chen Xiang knew Elder Dan wasn't lying, however he had suspicions that Elder Dan was the dean of the Danxiang Taoyuan. Otherwise, how was she able to gather such a large amount of herbs for refining building foundation dawn so quickly? Little girl, I'm going to ask you one thing. You need to answer me honestly, Chen Xiang said. You are already aware that I have a fire spirit, besides, I have always been good to you. I can choose to answer or not. Elder Dan replied. In her heart, she was also skeptical about what Chen Xiang wanted to ask, as he was actually being so serious right now. Chen Xiang nodded his head in response and asked, Are you the dean of Danxiang Taoyuan? Elder Dan didn't reply or speak as she looked at Chen Xiang. At this time, he was already able to confirm his suspicions. She really was the dean of Danxiang Taoyuan. Nope, I'm not the dean of Danxiang Taoyuan. However, I'm very familiar with her. Elder Dan denied Chen Xiang's accusation, however. He was pretty sure about this matter. You're not lying to me? Chen Xiang was somewhat skeptical. I did not lie to you. Or do you want me to take an oath? Elder Dan said. Don't. Chen Xiang started picking those azure profound fruit, and then said, Little girl, do you find the whereabouts for the materials of the 5-element true elemental Dan? I don't. If I did, I would be first to go and confirm and buy them for you. Elder Dan said as she sniffed that azure flower. With just a glance, it could easily be seen that she liked this flower very much. Chen Xiang laughed and said, Then thanks a lot in advance. Although you acted in such a way to me before, I never hated you. Hey, to tell you the truth, I really want to defeat you as soon as possible. I want to see who you are in the end, and I also want to confirm whether or not what you said about your appearance is true, whether you really are as beautiful as my Xian. Elder Dan tenderly snorted. Humph, then you need to become strong quickly and not get into any trouble. In a few years, a catastrophe will befall the entire world, and you need to be ready for it, so cultivate seriously. If you want to gather some rare herbs, it's better for you to visit the fragrance city of Danxiang Taoyuan. There is an auction house there. I'm going to enter into closed-door training for a while. After Elder Dan left, Chen Xiang muttered, Was this woman waiting for me to come back before she went into closed-door training? I truly can't understand her. Chen Xiang also thought it was about time to cultivate peacefully. However, before that, he needed to plant trees. He did not lack thousand vein fruits, metal spirit fruits and other materials, however. He was short on azure profound fruits. This was why he was going to plant 2 more of them. He now had golden dragon saliva, which should be able to accelerate the insane growth even further. As long as he refined a few building foundation dawn, he was sure he could nurture a bunch of true martial realm martial artists. Of course, it would also bring him huge amount of wealth, and he could then use that money to buy even more precious herbs. The extreme Dan King courtyard was extremely calm. It only had one person present, Chen Xiang. As for Wu Qianqian, D knows where Elder Dan sent her. Chen Xiang hasn't seen Wu Qianqian for a long time. Now it's time for you to start learning my devil techniques. The 3 heavenly realms will soon converge, and you need to learn some powerful martial techniques to make yourself stronger. Bai Yu said. Chen Xiang nodded his head. He planned to cultivate during the daytime and congeal the golden dragon saliva during the night. My devil techniques have very high requirements for physical strength, true qi and the divine sense. There are a total of 5 that are appropriate for you, out of which you have already learned the engulfing devil technique. Next, you are going to learn the transforming bone devil palm, penetrating heart devil eye, grasping soul devil curse, and the ice spirit devil aura. Bai Yu spoke while she began Pa-S. Sing these devil techniques onto Chen Xiang. Using the divine sense to Pa-S technique was not something common. Before, Chen Xiang's master, Huang Jintian, wasn't able to Pa-S on his knowledge in such a way. Chen Xiang had read quite some books, however. He still didn't find anything resembling how these two sisters Pa-S said on their technique. This was just another thing to add on the list for why he had suspicions that Su Meiyao and Bai Yu were not from the mortal world. Transforming bone devil palm, penetrating heart devil eye, grasping soul devil curse, and ice spirit devil aura. These 4 devil techniques sounded very formidable. Suddenly, a lot of related content pertaining to these 4 techniques appeared in Chen Xiang's mind. Regarding these 4 devil techniques, he now had a deep understanding. In the Devil Path sect, there was a powerful force known as the Transforming Bone Clan. They could use their signature martial technique to transform the bones and flesh into poisonous water, and so the Transforming Bone Clan became known for their Transforming Bone Poisonous Palm. However, the Transforming Bone Devil Palm Chen Xiang just learned was very different from the Transforming Bone Clans. This Transforming Bone Devil Palm was not only used to attack humans, it could also be used to attack some very hard materials, and reducing them into nothing. If it struck someone, just their bones would be melted away, while their flesh and meridians would still be left untouched. Not only could it be used for close-range melee attack, it could be used to create a powerful long-range chi attack. It was both a good and an evil martial technique. Imagine during a battle, if all the opposite party's bones were melted away, what would that person would turn into? This was exactly why the true chi requirement for this terrifying skill was so high. Penetrating heart devil eye, when Chen Xiang heard it, he thought this technique would allow him to see through the thoughts of others. On the contrary, this technique allowed someone to shoot beams through their eyes, specifically, in order to attack other people's heart, directly penetrating through and destroying it. Of course, not only could it be used to attack the heart, it could also be used to attack other organs. It was a kind of devil technique for insidious martial artists, and this made Chen Xiang secretly happy. He very much yearned to be an insidious person. During the battle, if someone shot 2 beams of vigorous true qi through their eyes, penetrating the other party's heart, how insidious would that move be? However, this skill had insanely high requirement for true qi and divine sense. You better not let many people know you cultivate the penetrating heart devil eye, otherwise your enemies might become wary of it. Bai Yu exhorted. She was someone who liked killing, even more so, someone who liked using various different methods to present death to the enemy. Grasping soul devil curse, Chen Xiang already knew a little bit about this technique. It was a kind of martial technique that could force someone to speak the truth. The divine sense requirement was very high for this skill. The grasping soul devil curse could not only control someone's soul to speak the truth, it could also be used to seize the soul and store it. Moreover, it could also be used to control their mind. It too was a very bizarre, powerful, and evil martial technique. Finally, the ice spirit devil aura. Similar to previous 4 techniques, this too was a very insidious kind of martial technique. What it released was not the true qi, but rather through using ice-cold true qi, it would quickly transform it into an ice-cold divine sense that could be considered an ice spirit. During the battle, silently releasing an ice spirit made of aura qi to attack others, an intangible and colorless sneak attack. After getting hit, though there would be nothing apparently wrong with their body, they would just subconsciously feel extremely cold, as if they have been sealed in ice. This attack caused a great deal of damage to one's spirit. Chen Xiang's foundations were very solid, whether it was true qi or divine sense or his physical strength. This was why he could practice these 4 techniques with twice the result from half the effort. He very easily mastered them. Only after the continuous improvement of various aspects could he use these devil techniques in the most vivid and thorough manner. 10 days said, in the small courtyard, there was now 2 new azure profound trees. Fortunately, these trees were not very big, otherwise they would not fit in this small courtyard. Chapter 2:17 Herb King Mountain. Chapter 2:17 Herb King Mountain. Chen Xiang hadn't left the extreme Dan King courtyard for the past 10 days. He wasn't only cultivating the devil techniques, but also irrigating the azure true found trees. He didn't pay attention to outside matters, for he was worried that he would be distracted by them and wander around. However, today someone knocked on the door of the extreme Dan courtyard. According to Elder Dan, no one would dare to knock on the door of the extreme Dan King courtyard. Not even Gu Dongchen or Wu Keiming would do so unless it was extremely important, which was why Chen Xiang immediately left to open the door. This was Elder Dan's domain. Not even Gu Dongchen or Wu Keiming would dare to casually come here. After opening the door, Chen Xiang saw Wu Keiming. "Little Baldy, what's the matter? Come in first," Chen Xiang said. "Nothing big, but it's not something we can ignore. I'm just fine here," Wu Keiming replied. "These past 10 days, there have been more and more conflicts between the devil path and the righteous martial artists. The grudges between the extreme martial sect and the true martial sect along with the beast martial sect have temporarily been put aside. However, the premise is that the bounty won't be removed." Chen Xiang nodded his head. He understood that the righteous sects needed to unite in order to deal with the devil path sections. If they were to let these devil path sects run amok, there was no need to wait for the catastrophe to arrive, as Chenwu mainland would already be destroyed before that. But we, the extreme martial sect, still haven't agreed to their terms. The dean asked me to let the young martial uncle decide. Wu Keiming said. "Whatever, even if they offer 100 million crystal stones, so long as Little Featherhead's statement remains effective, I'm not afraid of anyone," Chen Xiang said with an indifferent look. "Make Little Featherhead tell those guys that even if we're to temporarily work together, no matter who it is, if they want to kill me, they should be prepared to pay 10 times over," Wu Keiming replied. "Rest assured, the dean and I will make sure that not 2 strong guys will deal with you. You better be ready. The devil path sects and righteous sects are ready to fight, and if so, there will be a need for more moderate methods to resolve this dispute. In order for less casualties on both sides, it is highly likely that some disciples will be sent to have a contest with the opposing devil path sect's disciples." After Wu Keiming left, Chen Xiang immediately started refining Dawn. He had to enter the 3rd level of the true martial realm as soon as possible. In any case, a fight was inevitable between the righteous and devil path sects. It was just a matter of when. Chen Xiang had already obtained all the materials for refining the building foundation Dawn. Since he had the 37 azure profound fruits, he would be able to refine it 37 times. With his speed, 3 days would be enough to refine more than 100 building foundation Dawn. In the Chenwu mainland, the one who refined the most building foundation Dawn was probably Chen Xiang. Only he possessed so many rare resources. Refining the building foundation Dawn had long become a familiar process, and now it was as easy as a walk in the park. Since the possession of the heavenly sun fire spirit, Chen Xiang's alchemy speed had improved by leaps and bounds. If combined with the brilliant flame dragon furnace, he would be able to quickly refine any low-grade profound level Dawn. After 3 days had said, he had completely refined all 37 azure profound fruits. However, he had failed 2 times, and was only successful 35 times. That being said, during each refinement 4 Dawn were produced. In addition to the building foundation Dawn he had prior to this, he now had 150 Dawn. After the period of successful refinement, Long Shui clamored Chen Xiang for building foundation Dawn. After becoming aware of how formidable Long Shui was, Chen Xiang was very generous to her. That being said, he couldn't spoil her too much, so he only ended up giving her 2. After sending off this little greedy dragoness, Chen Xiang swallowed 8 building foundation dawn in one breath, and began to cultivate. As the true qi was being compressed in the 5 divine beast forms, the true element grains shone brightly. When Chen Xiang went to deal with the issue with the mine, he had engulfed a 5th-level true martial realm devil path martial artist. At that time, his true qi had also improved a little. Now that he had so many building foundation dawn, entering the 3rd level of the true martial realm was no longer a challenge for him. Another 5 days had passed, said, Chen Xiang had completely refined those 8 building foundation dawn, and now in each beast form 2 extra true element grains had been illuminated, as such a total of 19 grains had been illuminated in each true qi beast form. He was just lacking a total of 5 true element grains, before he could enter the 3rd level of the true martial realm. Now Chen Xiang found that with the increase of the illuminated true element grains, it became more and more difficult to lit up the remaining grains. He required a lot more true qi to compress, before it would be possible to illuminate another true element grain, making the process a lot harder. At night, there was a sudden flash of a fiery light in a mountain forest with relatively strong spirit qi. Large wings made from flames appeared and disappeared not longer after. Chen Xiang had flown toward the Herb King Mountain. When he got close enough, he had immediately retracted his vermilion bird fire wings and landed on the ground. The matter about Herb King Mountain's Lu family colluding with the Devil Path sect had still not been found. But once it was found, the various righteous forces would, without any delay, attack. At that time, the Herb King Mountain's resources would be robbed, and as such nothing would be left behind. Chen Xiang was sure that Herb King Mountain's Lu family would soon find their own matter of colluding with the Devil Path sect brought to light. However, by that time, they would have already escaped with most of the resources. Chen Xiang, after thinking of this point, went to the Lu family without any hesitation. The Lu family had once wanted to kill him. How could he just forget about that? Chen Xiang, from the information gathered by Zhu Rong, had come to understand what this Herb King Mountain was so famous for. It was precisely because it had a herb garden from a distant past, and this herb garden was very mysterious, as only God knew who created it, but when it had been discovered, the Lu family had sacrificed a lot of geniuses to acquire this herb garden. Chen Xiang had also acquired a herb garden. He speculated whether the master of both herb gardens was the same or not. Herb King Mountain, it was no different from any other mountain. It was just that there had once been a lot of precious spirit herbs here, and that was the only reason for it to be famous. Furthermore, the spirit qi here was rather rich. The Lu family was established at the top of the Herb King Mountain, and that herb garden was hidden very mysteriously. Even after Zhu Rong's thorough investigation, he still hadn't been able to locate it. Chen Xiang took out the Emperor Crystal, before he sensed everything around him, and after not finding anything containing spirit qi, he discharged the conjecture of having a vein present here. The last time when I went to find the herb garden, its location was in a cave within a mountain valley. That's a huge mountainside. Chen Xiang looked at the humongous Herb King Mountain. Although there was no mountain valley nearby, there was still a big mountainside. That mountainside could probably accommodate a herb garden. Little dragon, didn't you sense anything? Chen Xiang asked. I sense a strange energy, albeit very weak. I can still feel it. It should be a huge array inside that mountainside. Long Shui replied. Chen Xiang, in his heart, was elated. He had also guessed the same. Just as he was about to move, Long Shui once again said, "There are a lot of people patrolling there. You should be careful." Chen Xiang wore a black robe with a black hood as he took advantage of the darkness and hid among the GRAs. With the help of the Oi Tai Chi subduing dragon exercise, he converged his breath, making it difficult for others to discover him. Long Shui was also not able to probe any kind of entrance, but he could still sense that there was something inside the mountainside, so Chen Xiang started to search around the big mountain for an entrance. Although it was a dark night, Chen Xiang cultivated the Azure Dragon Divine Exercise, and with it he could see clearly in the night, although everything was azure. Soon, he saw several people lurking in the GRA's. Although they were in the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, their true qi was very pure, and with very strong muscles, they were all very vigilant, all of them were exceptional masters. Chapter 218 Cleaned Out Everything. Chapter 218 Cleaned Out Everything. Chen Xiang didn't kill these people, otherwise it would disturb the others that hid elsewhere. By then, the entire Lu family would be alerted. This time his purpose for coming here was only to empty their pockets. He was sure the Lu family was only able to join the Devil Path sect because they had good resources to provide. Meanwhile, the Lu family wanted to learn devil techniques in order to become more powerful. Devil techniques could allow people to rapidly increase their strength in a short span of time, and allow one to master a stronger power. However, this was obtained through very ruthless means. Some devil techniques needed one to drink human blood, eat human hearts, flesh, among other things. Only then could they be cultivated. Generally, ordinary civilians would have to bear the brunt of this cultivation process, which was why the Devil Path were not tolerated by the general public. Once the Lu family ran out or lost their prideful stock of herbs, then the Lu family would be abandoned by the Devil Path sect. By then, the matter about their collusion with the Devil Path sect would come to light, and there would be no need for Chen Xiang to personally move his hand. The entire Lu family would be annihilated. As Chen Xiang was lurking in the GRA's around the giant mountain, he finally found a relatively large number of people at the foot of the mountain. There were even 2 second-level true martial realm martial artists there. There were not many true martial realm martial artists in these families, however, 2 of those people were stationed here. It was evident that they were guarding something important. Chen Xiang affirmed that the herb garden's entrance was close. If it's the same herb garden you encountered before, it's possible that the Lu family has no way to enter the garden through the true entrance. If it was the true entrance, they wouldn't need to station so many people here. It is highly likely that this entrance was a created one, Baipa S. Sing the true entrance. Su Meiyao said. Chen Xiang nodded his head and continued searching for the true entrance because he still had the key in his possession. Although he was unsure whether it would be useful, there was no harm in trying. Chen Xiang looked at a cave with a stone door inside. In the vicinity as well as inside the cave there were many guards. Although not very strong, every single one of them were very vigilant. If Chen Xiang could not find the true entrance, he would have no choice but to enter through this heavily guarded one. When he would have to inevitably act, it would certainly alert the rest of the Lu family. After circling around half the mountain, Chen Xiang found a place with very few guards stationed. There were only 1 or 2 occasionally patrolling. It should be here. Chen Xiang looked at a cave blocked by many boulders. He immediately went over and probed using his divine sense. There is a freaking gate inside, Chen Xiang said in excitement. He then lightly smacked a palm on a boulder. Suddenly, that boulder turned into powder, which was blown away by the wind. This was the transforming bone devil palm. Just a light tap, and that hard boulder was turned into very fine powder. Chen Xiang continued to smack a few palms one after another. He opened up a hole near the ground large enough for him to crawl into. After crawling inside, he used the nearby weeds to cover the hole, lest it was discovered by the patrolling guards. Chen Xiang arrived at a pitch-black cave. While walking deep into the cave, he took out a piece of SHI plus New York stone to illuminate his surroundings. Soon, he came across an iron gate. This gave Chen Xiang a very familiar feeling because it was the very same door as the herb garden he found before. He took out the key and inserted it into a small opening on the iron gate, and as he turned it, the iron gate gradually opened, but slowly only because Chun Xiang exhausted all his power to hold down the iron gate in order to prevent the iron gate causing any sound or a fierce vibration. As the iron gate opened, Chun Xiang didn't see a herb garden like he was expecting, but rather a palace sage in front of him, with a familiar aura coming from its other end. He quickly said through it and arrived at the end. When he did, he was completely startled and stood there staring as his heart quickly sped up. He was extremely excited because right in front of him was a sieve herb garden filled with various rare spirit herbs. The spirit herbs in here were mostly auxiliary herbs. It was evident that not many of them had grown for very long. Beside them were some relatively more expensive herbs. To be precise, herbs required for refining true elemental Dan, white jade Dan or similar high-grade spirit-level Dan. There were at least 10 trees of metal spirit tree and 1,000 vein tree above, which the fruits had already matured. However, it seemed the Lu family was reluctant to pick them. Goodfellas, isn't that the 5 elements lotus? The main ingredient for refining 5 elements true elemental Dan. Chun Xiang exclaimed as he saw a lotus flower at the center of the herb garden with 5 petals, each with different color. This was the 5 elements lotus, or also known as the 5-color lotus. Holy Shi+T. Isn't that the 9-sun flame tree? Chun Xiang saw a large tree with fiery red leaves. He could not help but exclaim in surprise. Also the fire spirit GRA.SS. Chun Xiang, after seeing the miniature fiery red GRA.S. under that big tree, once again could not help but exclaim. The GRA.S. looked like jumping flames. This was one of the main ingredients for refining the flame Dan. Chun Xiang didn't expect this herb garden to be so much better than the one he found before. It actually had so many high-grade spirit herbs. There is no one here, quickly grab everything, Long Shui hastily said. At this moment she was also being greedy. She could not wait to turn into a little rabbit and go around digging all of it up. But she also had a sense of proportion. She knew she had to stand guard for Chun Xiang. If he could steal all of these precious spirit herbs, there would definitely be a large share for her. Chun Xiang entered the herb garden. First he chose to pick up those precious herbs up. He dug them up right from their roots, and then stored it all in his storage magic equipment. He wanted to move all of them over to the extreme Dan King courtyard. He first dug up the 9-sun flame tree, on top of which there were 2 9-sun flames fruit. This tree was rather big, about the height of 3 people, but not very thick, with very firm leaves and roots, and as such there was no need to be afraid of damage when transplanting it. He quickly dug the tree out, and then went for the 5-color lotus, fire spirit GRA.S. And only after digging all of them up, did he finally go for the metal spirit tree and the 1,000-vein tree. Fortunately, when he came here, he brought along many storage equipment, otherwise he simply could not take them all. At this time, he had no choice but to ask Long Shui, this greedy little dragoness, to help him out in digging up these herbs. There was simply too many herbs that could be used for refining true elemental Dan, white jade Dan or various other sorts of Dan, and countless commonly used highly matured spirit herbs, some of which were later planted by the Lu family. Long Shui's movements were very nimble. She was rather excited, her little mouth didn't stop moving, she dug up herbs and ate them as she wished. A few times she didn't even peel the herbs before swallowing it whole. For example, she dug out a large ginseng and swallowed it along with the mud. Greedy little dragoness, how about turning into a demon beast with a bigger mouth? That way you can eat more and even quicker. Chun Xiang laughed and said, if it was not for this place being under the watch of the Lu family, he would have already asked out those 2 beauties in the ring to help him pick these spirit herbs. That would be rather ugly, Long Shui said while chewing a spirit GRA.S with its roots sticking out. Just look at yourself, your current appearance is already very ugly. Chen Xiang glanced at the what remained of the herb garden. He had no clue how long it would take to harvest the entire garden, so he could only speed up and hope no one came. After picking countless spirit herbs, Chen Xiang had lost all track of time. Long Shui, on one side, was eating, while on the other she dug out spirit herbs. She herself wasn't clear how many herbs she ate. She also digested them quickly. She simply wasn't aware of what a bulging stomach from overeating was. Chen Xiang saw the way she was eating. He got very worried about her belly being blown up. If not for Long Shui paying attention to all movements around them, he might not have been able to harvest these spirit herbs so quickly without any worry. I've finally picked everything. Long Shui handed over many storage pouches to Chen Xiang, all completely filled to the brim with spirit herbs. Looking at the now barren herb garden, which had been originally lush with various plants and trees, now covered in various pits, Chen Xiang smiled and said, "Didn't you leave a little bit for yourself as snacks?" Long Shui naughtily smiled and said, "Of course I have, but I'm not going to tell you how much I took." As Chen Xiang squeezed her face, she returned back to his arm, before speaking. "Chen Xiang, in the center of this herb garden, there is a stone buried under the ground. Although the stone is not any rare ore, but it is cut very neatly, it should be a monument." So long as no one arrived, Chen Xiang was fearless of anything. He arrived at the center, and soon dug up that stone. It was indeed a monument carved out from stone, and had Dan King Li Tianjun carved on it in large bold characters. Chapter 219 World, First Mysterious Realm. Chapter 219 World, First Mysterious Realm. Elder Dan, and that mysterious dean of Danxiang Taoyuan, were the strongest alchemists in the entire Qinwu mainland. Since Elder Dan was still a step away from Dan King until now, Chen Xiang had never heard of someone being a real Dan King. It turned out to be him. Su Meiyao exclaimed with surprise. "Who?" Chen Xiang hastily asked. "He is indeed a Dan King, however he is long dead, because he held a clue about a very sought-after mysterious realm. That mysterious realm is very famous in the mortal world, known as a world-first treasure trove, also known as the world's first mysterious realm. Inside it, there are countless rare and precious spirit herbs, spirit beasts, exotic and wonderful treasures, and so on. That's why he was hunted down by many fearsome martial artists across the mortal worlds." Su Meiyao replied. Bai Yu continued, "This guy entered this mysterious realm at very young age, and obtained many things from there. After many years, he became a Dan King. However, he revealed this confidential secret to his son, who was rather a greedy person through and through. So, this confidential secret was revealed, and he joined with some powerful martial artists to try and force his father to reveal the location of the world's first mysterious realm." Su Meiyao sighed. Li Tianjun was a very strong martial artist, however. Being hunted down by various major martial artists made his situation very dangerous. Later, nothing had been heard about him for an extremely long time, and according to his son, he was already dead. Chen Xiang looked at that monument, asked, "When did this happen?" "About 10,000 years ago. It appears he was still alive, and even went to the heavenly realm. At that time, he was already praised as the world's #1 martial artist, to be precise, the strongest under the heavenly realm." Su Meiyao was somewhat excited at this point. He left these herb gardens, maybe he also left the clue to the entrance of the world's first mysterious realm somewhere. Also, the refiner's scroll you got maybe came from his hands as well. That refiner's scroll was in an inheritance bead, and was very esoteric. Even Lu Menger was not able to completely understand it. Chen Xiang looked at the monument, and poured his divine sense into it. However, it was blocked out by a mysterious power. "There is something inside the monument," Long Shui suddenly said. Under the vigorous slap of Chen Xiang's palm, cracks appeared on the monument. He once again slapped down on it, and as the monument broke into pieces, a black iron box fell down. Chen Xiang, Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu were all extremely excited, because inside this black iron box, there could very well be a clue to the world's first mysterious realm. Chen Xiang picked up that hand-sized small iron box and carefully looked all around it. He found a small hole on top of the box, just large enough for a key to be inserted. He quickly used the same key that opened the herb garden, and just like before, a beast's skin was present inside. As he spread it out, he saw a very detailed map inside. Chen Xiang carefully looked at the map, and his heartbeat became faster and faster. He was absolutely sure that this should be the map pointing at the entrance of the first mysterious realm. However, in order to enter the mysterious, he needed to wait a long time, because this mysterious realm required a long interval of time to open. When the darkness engulfed the light on the Sun-Moon Island, the entrance to the mysterious realm will open. Chen Xiang repeated these words over and over again, trying to understand it. What does that mean? Solar eclipse asterisk. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu said in chorus. TLN, solar eclipse. The literal meaning is, the heavenly dog eats the sun, and Chinese people really used to believe at one time that this was what caused eclipses. Chen Xiang immediately understood. When? This Sun-Moon Island seems to be in our mortal martial world. I don't know, but it's going to be soon. Its signs will appear a year before it. By then, Russ. Plusing to the Sun-Moon Island would not be too late. Bai Yuyu replied. Chen Xiang just finished looking through the map when he heard the stone door opening. It came from the entrance of the another Pa's sage of the herb garden. It was the Pa's sage the Lu family had created on their own. Get out of here quickly! Long Shui hastily shouted. Chen Xiang immediately flashed into the iron gate. At that time the iron gate automatically closed by itself, but also released an explosive sound and tremor. He just took a few steps, before he heard a furious roar coming from the herb garden. The entire Herb King Mountain shook, followed by a furious earth-shaking roar. Chen Xiang quickly left the cave. It was actually noon. He and Long Shui had unwittingly stayed for so long in the herb garden. 5th stage true martial realm from left and right are coming towards you from that side. Also one person in the extreme state. Long Shui had not yet completed her sentence before Chen Xiang saw a few people from all 4 directions rush. Plusing over. Meanwhile from the sky, there was a suffocating mighty pressure bearing down upon him. Good bizarre and evil true chi. Chen Xiang speculated that this extreme state martial artist should be the strongest among the Lu family. Surrounded by these many people, it would be truly difficult for him to escape. He immediately cast the water escape from the black tortoise divine exercise. Under his foot, a pool of water suddenly emerged. Before those people arrived, Chen Xiang was already completely submerged into that pool, though a water pass sage under the ground, he escaped into a nearby river. However, this completely drained him of his black tortoise true chi. Chen Xiang wore a black robe with a hood covering him completely. Those people weren't able to see his appearance. However, from the display of the water escape, it shouldn't be long before they figure out who he was. After all, Chen Xiang had once cast the same technique before. After returning to the extreme Dan King courtyard, Chen Xiang first expanded his small courtyard and renovated it into a huge herb garden. Afterwards, he planted those various spirit trees and some yet to fully mature spirit GRAs and spirit flowers from the Herb King Mountain. This whole process took an entire day. 10 metal spirit trees, 10,000 vein trees, 3 azure profound trees, a 9 sun flames tree, some fire spirit GRAs under the 9 sun flames tree, and on the other side there was the 5 color lotus. These were only the relatively more valuable herbs. Only the lotus seed of the 5 color lotus was mainly used for alchemy. All the lotus seeds in the 5 color lotus were usable, But Chen Xiang still didn't have all the ingredients for the 5 elements true elemental Dan yet, which was why he plucked all the lotus seeds for planting. He wanted even more 5-color lotuses. Chen Xiang now diluted all the golden dragon saliva he had congealed with water, and uniformly irrigated all the rare and precious herbs in the herb garden. Although it was diluted, the growth of these herbs was not in any way slow. After all of this was finished, Chen Xiang swallowed down 5 building foundation dawn and began cultivating. Although he had many building foundation dawn, he could not eat them in succession for cultivation, otherwise his foundation would become unstable. Whenever he broke through, he would go out to temper himself for a period of time, or immerse himself in alchemy. By familiarizing himself with utilization of the new state of true qi, he could solidify the realm in order to avoid an unstable foundation. Chen Xiang knew a lot of things must be going on outside, however. He didn't want to inquire about the situation. Even if someone came knocking on the door, he still didn't open it. He was completely immersed either in cultivation or irrigating those spirit herbs. At this time, he had already entered the 3rd level of the true martial realm. A total of 150 true element grains were glistening with aura. This large amount of true qi made him anxious to create some trouble. He could not wait to immediately go out and take a high-rank mission to try out his strength. However, he still managed to hold himself back. Why? This was because he wanted to cultivate S.H.I. plus N2. The spirit in his consciousness was already in the infant state, and he needed to rapidly grow his infant soul. Before long, Xue would teach him the cultivation for S.H.I. plus N2, allowing his strength to exponentially increase. There was only one method to make the infant soul quickly grow up, and that was the elemental spirit Dan. Chen Xiang already had enough raising soul GRA. SS and divine spirit GRA. S on hand. He now had a total of 100 sets of materials for the elemental spirit Dan, all of which he had originally acquired in the Black Tortoise mysterious realm. Chapter 220 Elemental Spirit Dan. Chapter 220 Elemental Spirit Dan. The elemental spirit Dan was a low-grade profound level Dan. Its rarity and grandeur could not be compared with the building foundation dawn. Besides, its herbs were even more hard to find than the building foundation Dan, not to mention its difficulty of refining was leagues above the other as well. The difficulty of refining the building foundation Dan was around the same as high-grade spirit level dawn. It was mainly because the herbs required were rare and precious compared with its counterparts that it was included in the low-grade profound level dawn. However, not only were the ingredients for the elemental spirit dawn even rarer, its refining difficulty was also tremendously high. A lot of raising soul GRA. S and divine spirit flower had been nurtured by Chen Xiang. Although they were all seedlings, he had the golden dragon saliva. Making these flowers and GRA. S mature faster was not at all difficult. Inside the private room, Chen Xiang processed those herbs according to Su Meiyao's instructions. The only part needed from the raising soul GRA. S was a small part close to the root. Meanwhile, only a particular petal and root was needed from the divine spirit flower. All of the above needed to be processed very carefully. If there was even a little more cut off than required, it would result in chaotic spirit qi, which would lead the refinement to fail. The divine spirit flower and raising soul GRA. S were the main ingredient. Besides them, there were many other auxiliary herbs, way over 30. All of these herbs were relatively common herbs, such as ginseng, spirit GRA, monster cores, and so on. However, the age requirements for these herbs were rather high. The lowest needed to be 3,000 years old. As such, these auxiliary herbs were also rather hard to find. However, it was nothing difficult for Chen Xiang. He had long obtained the required auxiliary herbs from both the recent herb garden invasion and the Black Tortoise mysterious realm. After processing and arranging the auxiliary ingredients and the main ingredients uniformly, Chen Xiang stored each set into a separate jade box. He finished as much as 10 sets before he took out the brilliant flame dragon furnace and began refining. Chen Xiang already learned the whole process on how to refine the elemental spirit Dan from Su Meiyao. However, the fundamental nature of the elemental spirit Dan compared to the other Dan he had refined before were not the same, which was why he needed to get practical experiences and address the minute details. As these herbs were placed inside the brilliant flame dragon furnace, Chen Xiang released the flames, instantly incinerating these herbs. At the start, the flames were too intense, which lead to a sudden combustion of these herbs, releasing a burst of tyrannical spirit cheese. These collided with each other inside the furnace, causing the brilliant flame dragon furnace to fiercely shake. Chen Xiang immediately suppressed these tyrannical spirit cheese with his divine sense and gradually released them out. Once those spirit cheese left the brilliant flame dragon furnace, they dispersed and disappeared in between heaven and earth. Sigh, that's one set wasted. Chen Xiang sighed. To instantly experience failure at the beginning was an unexpected blow. It was something he had not experienced for a long time. Since you have the heavenly sun fire spirit, your flames are very intense. Besides, this process compared to the one before are very different. These herbs are very easily incinerated. In fact, I already warned you about this. Su Meiyao reprimanded him without any scruple. Chen Xiang nodded his head and once again began refining. The second time, he slowly baked those herbs bit by bit, so that the spirit cheese were slowly released. At the same time, he used his divine sense to fuse those various kinds of herbal spirit cheese as they were released. It started. Chen Xiang frowned. At this moment, his divine sense began to drain away. This was because the raising soul GRAS and the divine spirit flower both produced divine sense. As these divine sense were ownerless, they instinctively absorbed the strength of other divine senses. At the moment, they were absorbing Chen Xiang's divine sense. If the herbs absorbed too much divine sense, it would lead to alchemy failure. Too little would also have the same end result. For this entire process, a very accurate control was absolutely necessary. Chen Xiang once again failed. He was worried about having too much of his divine sense getting absorbed, so he fused those herbal spirit cheese and herbal powders together too quickly to try and solidify the Dan in advance. As a result, the spirit chi absorbed too little of his divine sense, resulting in not enough strength. As such, during the solidification of the Dan, it was very loose before slowly scattering. Alchemy was precisely done in such a way. Only after failing again and again would the alchemist be successful in grasping the most crucial point. Even while refining the building foundation Dan, Chen Xiang had failed many times. Not to mention the elemental spirit Dan, which was several times harder to refine than the building foundation Dan. In the blink of an eye, 10 days said. Chen Xiang had already failed 70 times. Still not enough, it's just 70 times, that's all. Keep going. Su Meiyao nodded her head with satisfaction. If Chen Xiang was successful in 40 to 50 tries, that would be too abnormal. Although Su Meiyao knew Chen Xiang had an extremely heaven-defying talent regarding alchemy, it should also have a limit. Now that she finally saw Chen Xiang failed so many times, she didn't know why, but her mood was very good. Seeing Su Meiyao being so happy, Chen Xiang happily smiled and said, "Sister Meiyao, let's bet that I would fail no more than 100 times before successfully refining this elemental spirit Dan." Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu were both inside the ring. Although there was no one else present, it was still the site of extreme martial sect. With many Nirvana realm martial artists somewhere around here, they were worried they would be found, hence they didn't dare to come out. After thinking for a while, Su Meiyao promised, "Okay. If you lose, you have to loudly shout, 'I'm an idiot' 3 times in the extreme martial sect square. If I lose..." Chen Xiang laughed and said, If you lose, you've to kiss me on the lips. How about it? Su Meiyao sank into deep thought. She pondered for a while. She knew the specific amount of divine sense that needed to be absorbed was a giant hurdle. Even after failing 70 times, Chen Xiang was still not able to control the right amount. Not to mention, during the solidification of the Dan in latter stages, the suppression of multiple 1/2s of ownerless spiritual power transformed from the divine sense would be extremely hard to fuse with the herbal powder. This checkpoint still needed many failures before success would occur, at least it was like that for her. If Su Meiyao lost, she had to kiss Chen Xiang on his lips. This stake was a bit larger compared to Chen Xiang's. After all, if she won, Chen Xiang only had to shout, "I'm an idiot," 3 times. Su Meiyao was purely bored, and that's why she was seeking something to stimulate her, seeking something for fun. How about this? If you lose, you have go and kiss Zhu Rong's cheeks, moreover, in front of Yun Xiaodao and Squinted Dragon, Su Meiyao said with a tender laugh. Thinking of this scene, she couldn't stop giggling. Just thinking of this made Chen Xiang feel nausea. Now he didn't have any confidence controlling the failure to under 100 tries. If he lost, that would be pretty miserable. However, if Chen Xiang won, he would be able to kiss Su Meiyao on lip. This temptation was extremely huge. This was precisely what gambling was. A loss was extremely miserable, while a win would bring extreme joy. Chen Xiang also deeply considered for a while, before he nodded his head. Okay, but you have kiss me a bit longer, it can't be a superficial peck on the lips. No problem. Su Meiyao tenderly laughed and said, "Are you sure you can win?" Chen Xiang laughed and said, "No, but thinking of kissing you is too large a temptation to possess. Such beauty, ever if I lose miserably I still have to try. Sister Meiyao, don't worry, I'm very experienced in kissing. At that time I'll teach you what to do. Although you've lived for very long, I'm sure you are definitely unexperienced." Su Meiyao didn't abate. Chen Xiang, on the contrary, she rather liked him. Chen Xiang was handsome enough, had an excellent talent, and if he became a powerful martial artist in the future, he was indeed a pretty good partner. Besides, her bare jade body was already seen by Chen Xiang. Kissing him didn't amount to anything much in retrospect. However, she didn't know why, but she was a bit antic. 1p, what would happen if she lost. After living for so long, she indeed had never kissed a man. Sister Yuyu, how about you also join in the fun? Thinking of kissing by Yuyu, Chen Xiang suddenly became even more excited. As opposed to Su Meiyao, by Yuyu, this iceberg beauty, stirred up an even more intense desire to conquer her. Chapter 221 Can't Lose. Chapter 221 Can't Lose by Yuyu didn't immediately reply. She was actually in consideration. It was clear she was thinking of betting, but as she was not an alchemist, she was not sure whether Chen Xiang could be successful or not before 100 tries. Oh well, forget about it. Once I have fully grasped it, then we'll see. Bai Yuyu, after much consideration, refused Chen Xiang's proposition. From the very start, she had profound divine vein and mainly cultivated freezing cold true qi. Furthermore, she also cultivated ruthless devil skill, which could make one not even recognize their own closest relatives. That was why she was usually cold. However, Chen Xiang and Su Meiyao both knew that under that ice-cold semblance, she would also be happy, excited, and be concerned about others. She too had emotions of happiness, sorrow, anger, and joy. That was why Su Meiyao was very relieved. She did not want her senior sister, whom she had shared and depended on for many years, to repeat the same mistake and walk the same path as their master. Su Meiyao didn't want Bai Yuyu to turn into a devil who would slaughter everyone, becoming a person who wouldn't even recognize her own relatives and friends. Su Meiyao also had no choice but to admit, after Bai Yuyu befriended Chen Xiang, she had truly changed a lot. Chen Xiang was somewhat disappointed, however. He still rubbed his hands in excitement. His spirit was briming, as if he had been injected with chicken blood. He continued to refine Dawn. He wanted to be successful in refining the elemental spirit Dan, while preventing the number of his failures could not exceed 100. Another day passed, and Chun Xiang once again failed 10 more times. As before, he could not pass the absorption of divine sense hurdle, and this made Su Meiyao secretly excited. Obviously, she too had refined the elemental spirit Dan, and although she didn't have a soul of Hi+2, eating elemental spirit Dan was best for promoting divine sense. In the past, before she was able to refine elemental spirit Dan, she had failed 600 times, and at that time, the depression she felt had almost made her spew blood. Another day passed, and Chun Xiang once again failed 10 more times. As before, he was still stuck at that checkpoint. Holy F.U.C. King S.H.I+T, do Father F.U.C. King have to kiss that D.A.M. and fatty in front of Yun Xiaodao and Squinted Dragon? Chun Xiang started to lose his composure. If he failed, what awaits him was equal to going to H.E.L.L. Su Meiyao giggles came from inside the ring. The past 2 days, whenever she thought of what Chun Xiang would have to do after he lost, she would heartlessly start laughing. For her, these were her most happy days in so many years. It's not worth it. Sister Meiyao, if you lost, you just have to kiss this handsome, suave and outstanding gentleman on the lip. But if I lose, I have to kiss Zhu Rong, that pig. Chun Xiang's hand, which was holding the herbs, slightly trembled. Losing would put him in a place beyond redemption, but of course, if he won, it would very cool. But now he felt his defeat was just a matter of time. Ha ha, this is what you asked for yourself. Who asked you to think of kissing me? Su Meiyao tenderly laughed and said. Bai Yu didn't laugh either. She was in fact very looking forward to who was going to lose or win. She was very much in antic anticipation of that funny scene. Chun Xiang shook his head. He knew that if he himself lost, that would definitely be an everyday nightmare for him. 10 more tries. Chun Xiang, in his mind, told himself that he must win. Night time. Chun Xiang heaved a long sigh. He had already failed 98 times. You only have 2 tries left. Su Meiyao giggled and said. Chun Xiang, at this moment, was very serious. He absolutely could not fail. He didn't speak with Su Meiyao again. He just calmed down his heart, took a rest while replaying the moment he had failed in his mind. He wanted to find the most crucial key. After taking rest, a confident aura flashed through Chun Xiang's eyes. He proficiently placed the herbs inside the furnace, before pouring the flames into it. Bit by bit, time slowly went by. Meanwhile, the brilliant flame dragon furnace was calm as before. This was the sign of successful refinement. Su Meiyao and Bai Yu were secretly shocked. When Su Meiyao was secretly clenching her teeth, a thunderous sound suddenly broke out from the furnace as it exploded. This made Su Meiyao suddenly let out a sigh, and afterwards she began giggling. However, there was no sign of despair on Chun Xiang. He still had 1 more try left. Besides, after the last try, he had already crossed that threshold. His failure only came during the final moment of the Dan's solidification. Through the failure in the previous attempt, he had finally found the reason. He took a rest for a while, before once again placing the herbs inside the brilliant flame dragon furnace. With seriousness and calmness written all over his face, Chun Xiang began refining, dismissing any distracting thought. All of his attention was focused on the situation inside the furnace. The brilliant flame dragon furnace remained extremely calm, and at this point, beads of large sweat appeared on Chun Xiang's forehead. Apparently, he had already arrived at the most crucial moment of solidifying the Dan. During the solidification of Dan, those ownerless spiritual power were very irascible. Inside the elemental spirit Dan, there were only pure spiritual power, however, because they were squeezed together and very tyrannical. They might explode at any moment, and this was equivalent to compressing the true qi. However, Chen Xiang was now compressing the spiritual power. That was why he could easily suffer a backlash from those spiritual power, making him feel as if his head was splitting. By just losing a bit of his focus, he would immediately fall short of success. That was why during the refinement of the elemental spirit Dan, the Dan's solidification was also a checkpoint that was very difficult to cross. But of course, if the divine sense was strong enough, there would be no pressure of any sort at all. Su Meiyao knew this point. She concluded Chen Xiang's divine sense was slightly lacking, which was the main reason why she dared to bet. Although she was shocked by how quick Chen Xiang had traversed the absorption of divine sense to reach this threshold, she was still sure that Chen Xiang would still not be successful in his 100th attempt. Chen Xiang felt as if his head was about to split. However, just as he felt he would not be able to support anymore, the S.H.I+2 infant soul in his consciousness opened its small eyes. It let out a clear and sharp cry, and suddenly, divine sense poured forth into him in a steady stream, making his spirit slightly shake. With the vast divine sense he suddenly acquired, he immediately compressed that elemental spirit Dan. That originally fiercely shaking brilliant flame dragon furnace suddenly calmed down, and at this point, Chen Xiang had already entered the last step of the solidification of Dan. It was clear he was not far from success. What made Chen Xiang surprised was that S.H.I+2 infant soul had actually, at the most crucial moment, helped him, while also giving him so much divine sense. At the moment, he was currently looking at the little baby inside the S.H.I+2 infant soul. Currently, he still had no way to completely control this little baby, but if he could, he would be in possession of an extremely powerful divine sense. According to Long Shui, as long as he had reached the true fusion with the spirit, he would have truly crossed the first threshold of S.H.I+2. Generally, only a single Dan would come out from each set of herbs for the elemental spirit Dan. According to Su Meiyao, only 2 Dan could be refined at most. However, she herself was not able to refine that many. Since the first time Chen Xiang refined the elemental spirit Dan, he was not planning to take any risk. He just wanted to refine a Dan in order to increase his chances of success. However, even this was very difficult to follow, and it had even made him fail 99 times. As long as his failed attempts had not exceeded 100 times, he had won. Su Meiyao nibbled her lip. From the past few days till now, she had been laughing every day, but at this moment, no laughter came out from her mouth anymore. Instead, her face was completely flushed. "Senior sister, now what to do? I'm afraid." Su Meiyao leaned on Bai Yuyu's arm and said, "Just don't go outside." Bai Yuyu, although she didn't smile or laugh, it was evident in her eyes that she was completely gloating. "No way. I'll be despised by that brat." Su Meiyao shook her head and said, "Anyway, you're just kissing him, and you are not spread your legs for him." Bai Yuyu slightly raised the corner of her lips. Although her smile was somewhat stiff, it was still very beautiful. Su Meiyao's pretty face was completely flushed. She didn't think Bai Yuyu could speak so openly. She angrily retorted, "Senior sister, aren't you enjoying this? You asked for this. Anyway, you are usually intimate with the brat, kissing with him is nothing. Didn't you say you quite like him? But he's just little weaker now," Bai Yuyu said. At this time, Su Meiyao heard Chen Xiang's nasty and sinister laughter. "Sister Meiyao, I finished refining the elemental spirit Dan. You quickly take a bath, wear some pretty clothes, and come out to have a kiss with me." Chapter 222 You Bet, You Pay. Chapter 222 You Bet, You Pay. Chen Xiang opened the furnace and took out a very beautiful elemental spirit Dan. It was wrapped in a golden brilliance, and exquisitely carved, with a white light like flame beating at the center. Su Meiyao came out. She wore a casual white dress with uncombed and disorderly hair. However, that still couldn't hide her peerless beauty. On the contrary, it added a strange sort of charm. She nibbled on her lips, as her tender and charming face was filled with displeasure. She couldn't help but tenderly snort as she saw that nasty smile on Chen Xiang's face. Sister Meiyao, I'm a veteran. You don't need to worry, I won't bite your tongue. Rather, I'm afraid of you biting my tongue, Chen Xiang said with a grin, as he moved towards Su Meiyao. Su Meiyao glanced at the elemental spirit Dan. Chen Xiang was indeed successful in refining it, moreover, it was of top quality, which made her secretly give up all resistance. How do you want to start? Su Meiyao's pretty face flushed slightly, as she asked in a low voice. Raise your head and close your eyes, leave the rest to me. Chen Xiang licked his lips, and said with an evil smile. Su Meiyao tenderly spat, before closing her eyes, and raising her head to face Chen Xiang. Her heartbeat accelerated, and she became extremely tense, especially when she felt that Chen Xiang was gradually approaching. Chen Xiang looked at that stunning and coquettish beauty. He couldn't help but lightly stroke Su Meiyao's cheek with the back of his hand, and savor that white creamy feeling. Su Meiyao's eyelashes slightly shook a bit, before she tenderly snorted and said, Hurry up, don't mess with me. Chen Xiang mischievously laughed. Su Meiyao was willing to accept a loss if she had agreed to a bet. Afterwards, two figures embraced each other. As they both got drunk in that marvelous feeling, both of them completely lost track of time. After an unknown duration of time, this tender scene was shattered as Long Shui tenderly shouted, Someone's coming. At this time, Chen Xiang was reluctant to part with Su Meiyao. As she separated from Chen Xiang's bosom, she looked at him with a confused and beautiful expression in her eyes. However, she soon lowered her head and spat, before returning back to the ring. Chen Xiang grinned, licked his lips, and savored that lingering feeling. After Su Meiyao returned to that small residence inside the ring, she collapsed on the bed. She didn't speak, and lowered her head thinking of something. Her face was still slightly rosy. Seeing this scene left by Yu baffled. Chen Xiang, what's kissing? Does it taste good? I also want to try. Long Shui suddenly asked, her voice full of curiosity. Eat my ass all day, do you only think of eating? Little brat, go away, this is adult business. Chen Xiang scoffingly rebuked. Humph, I have been in the dragon egg for thousands of years, you are the little brat. Long Shui berated in a tender voice. Chen Xiang left the private room. As he arrived in his little garden, he noticed Elder Dan blankly standing under the 9 sun flames tree. Noticing Chen Xiang arrive, Elder Dan fiercely turned around and hastily asked, What the hell happened here? Chen Xiang, while scratching his head, smiled and said, This isn't all that bad, right? Elder Dan coldly harumphed and said, Nonsense, the 5-color lotus, the 9 Su flames tree, fire spirit GRA. SS, raising soul GRA. S. Divine spirit flower, metal spirit trees, 1,000 vein trees, which of these aren't good things? Tell me honestly where the hell did you get all this? The 9 sun flames tree had already bore 2 fruits, so Elder Dan was fully aware that they weren't recently planted by Chen Xiang. Elder Dan had just come out of secluded training. In regards to the outside matters, she simply had no clue. Otherwise, there would be no need to ask Chen Xiang what was going on. You have to keep it a secret. You can't tell this to anyone else. Chen Xiang said. That is a given, we already know too many of each other's secret. You don't need to remind me. Chen Xiang grinned. These were all taken from the Herb King Mountain. I'm pretty sure the Lu family is currently looking around for me. Elder Dan was surprised for a moment. Chen Xiang had actually raided the Lu family's Herb King Mountain. However, she knew that the Lu family wasn't weak at all. They would absolutely not let Chen Xiang off scot-free. I'll reinforce the array here. Quickly go. The dean is assembling everyone above or in the true martial realm currently present in the extreme martial sect. Elder Dan said. Originally Elder Dan had to halt her closed-door training because of Gu Dongchen. Chen Xiang followed behind her and left the extreme Dan King courtyard. The A South Assembly Place was a large patch of open SPAC in the mysterious realm. On the way, Chen Xiang saw Yun Xiaodao and the others. Chen Xiang also noticed their complexion wasn't bad. With one glance he was sure that their good luck had once again played its part. Zhu Lao, did you get lucky again? Chen Xiang asked while laughing. Almost, I picked up a very easy high-ranked mission. Zhu Rong laughed and answered. He was a businessman, and in this regard, his vision was very accurate. Of course, some luck was also required. Elder Brother Chen, this time the Dean is gathering all us true martial realm martial artists. It seems the battle with the Devil Path sects is about to start. Right, the Liu family has actually posted a 5 million crystal stones bounty on you. Your worth has once again gone up. Yun Xiaodao said with a look of admiration, when can I have everyone posting a reward for me? How beautiful would such a scene be? Chen Xiang shook his head. If the Liu family didn't put a bounty on his head, that would be even more strange. After all, he had actually shaved off their entire foundation. Chen Xiang, what did you do to the Liu family? Why did they put such a high bounty on your head? Even when you killed their elder, they didn't put a bounty on your head. Su Weilong asked. Chen Xiang laughed and said, I didn't do anything, I just took a trip to the Liu family. Seeing Chen Xiang with that kind of smile, Yun Xiaodao understood took a trip meant he had definitely benefited from it. From the sheer value of the bounty, they were certain that he had certainly done a lot of HI+ing, fish up a fortune. Chen Xiang, where's my share? I helped you investigate the Liu family. Zhu Rong hastily grabbed Chen Xiang's arm, after which he quickly received a jade box from the latter. As Zhu Rong hastily opened it, he let out a strange cry, as his face was filled with surprise and excitement. He quickly closed the jade box, calmed down, and tried to act as if nothing had happened. This was because Chen Xiang had given Zhu Rong 2 building foundation dawn. Sigh, if only some of my sisters were so beautiful. Zhu Rong sighed. In his eyes, Chen Xiang was a nouveau riche, and also very candid and generous. Although Yun Xiaodao's and Su Weilong's strength was very good in their generation, Chen Xiang's felt they still fell short by a little, so he also gave each of them 2 building foundation dawn. This would give them the chance to improve their strength quickly. Building foundation dawn could allow them to improve their cultivation. After taking the Dan, their strength would become even more terrifying. Although, among their peers they were already very strong, there were still Serpas said by many of the same generation. And this was even after leaving the abnormal monsters, such as Chen Xiang, out. Besides, these building foundation Dan were a very rare and precious Dan, only Chen Xiang could produce so many of them with his odd technique. Moreover, not only did he refine them quickly, even their quality was very high. Not to mention that his building foundation dawn potency was several folds that of any other alchemist. Zhu Rong knew his stuff. With just a glance, he could tell that these building foundation dawn were out of the ordinary. Chapter 223 Candidates. Chapter 223 Candidates. Yun Xiaodao and Su Weilong were both scared just like Zhu Rong after they opened their respective jade boxes. They realized Chen Xiang also gave Zhu Rong 2 building foundation dawn. At once, 6 building foundation dawn came from Chen Xiang. This left them extremely surprised. Did Chen Xiang find a stash of building foundation dawn or something? Hey, a total of 500,000 crystal stones, are you going to buy or not? Chen Xiang laughed. In order to not let them feel burdened, Chen Xiang also had recovered a little crystal stones. How many do you have? I want all of them. Zhu Rong hastily shouted. Get out. Yun Xiaodao scoffingly said. Of course we're going to buy, but can't you reduce the price a little? You are actually bargaining with me, Really, proximity to pitch turns you black. Chen Xiang laughed and said as he glanced at Zhu Rong. Zhu Rong curled his lips and replied, "What proximity to pitch turns you black? This one always had good habits." Su Weilong very readily took out 500,000 crystal stones and gave it Chen Xiang. Su Weilong said with a light sigh, "This is all I have, all of a sudden I'm left with nothing." Chen Xiang's building foundation dawn were very useful for all of them. With this, they could quickly obtain a ton of true qi. After they walked into a huge courtyard, they saw 100 or so people already present. These were all the true martial realm disciples the extreme martial sect could gather, in total, a little more than 100 true martial realm martial artists. It was evident just from this that there were not many true martial realm in the Qinwu mainland. However, Chen Xiang had crippled more than 100 of them last time in the Black Tortoise mysterious realm. It was such a huge-scale event that it shocked the entire world. These past few days, the negotiations between our righteous sects and Devil Path sects have been fruitful. However, there is a precondition. According to the agreement, a battle is going to be held in the southern wasteland, between martial artists under the 5th level of the true martial realm. Those who enter the southern wasteland will face a life and death struggle. They will have to survive in the southern wasteland mountain range for 2 months. In the end, the side with most disciples surviving will be victorious, Gu Dongchen announced. Wu Kaming carried on, the righteous sects will send 50 disciples, while the Devil Path side will do the same. Our extreme martial sect will send 10 disciples. The true martial sect and the beast martial sect had suffered heavy losses, and thus they couldn't send too many. Plus, as the number 1 sect of the Qinwu mainland, the extreme martial sect naturally had to send more than the others. The Devil Path sects have proven again and again that they also have great potential in their little devil province. If they win, we righteous sects will then have to provide them with a large amount of resources, and if we allowed this to happen, with their growth, they would soon become a great threat for our righteous sections. Wu Kaming said in a heavy tone. Those below the 5th level true martial realm, and including 5th level true martial realm can partake. 1. P8 in this battle, who wants to go? Bear in mind this battle is very dangerous. Even a single misstep can take your life. Gu Dongchen's gaze swept over those true martial realm martial artists one by one. There were many under the 5th level true martial realm, however no one stepped forward. Chen Xiang shouted, "Count me in." Recognized as the youngest and most talented in his generation, Chen Xiang was obviously going to take the lead for the extreme martial sect. This made many elders secretly nod in appreciation. However, Gu Dongchen and Wu Kaming were both somewhat worried about their young martial uncle. They knew these Devil Path martial artists were not to be trifled with. Besides, the southern wasteland was in itself very dangerous. It was a notoriously dangerous place. "I'll also go." Yun Xiaodao followed up. This cry was immediately followed by Zhu Rong and Su Weilong. Everyone could tell they had just stepped into the true martial realm, but actually had such guts. This made many secretly admire them. "Sign me up." This time, the speaker was Yao Haixing, Chen Xiang's apprentice. Now 5 people had signed up, all of them had good relations with Chen Xiang. "I'll also go, I can't fall behind the youth." A middle-aged man slightly laughed and said. This time it was Hao Dongqing, Zhu Rong's uncle. 4 left, however, for Wu Kaming and Gu Dongchen. This result was very unsatisfactory. This was because the majority of the candidates were young. Whether their experience or the required martial skills, they were lacking. Young people will only suffer disadvantages. Of course, Chen Xiang was an exception. Are all the other martial courtyards cowardly? All 6 people partook. 1. Aiding came from our 15th martial courtyard. Yun Xiaodao berated in a ridiculing tone. Exactly, the first martial courtyard. This number is in vain for these guys, such a waste of a good martial courtyard. Zhu Rong also followed up with another insult. Many were very reluctant in their hearts to fight with vicious and fierce individuals from the Devil Path sections. Facing the ridicule of those younger than them, although they were furious, everyone chose to remain silent. At this moment, the entire courtyard was dead silent. The extreme martial sect still had 4 spots left, however. No disciples came forward. Gu Dongchen was slightly angry. He didn't expect the extreme martial sect's disciples to be so weak and cowardly. Even the current new generation of true martial realm disciples dared to step forward, but none of the old ones. Gu Dongchen didn't want to force anyone, however. He was now left with no choice. Just as he was about to speak, Chen Xiang said, "Dean, how long is left before the start of battle?" 3 months. Leave those last 4 guys to me. After 3 months, I'll bring 4 true martial realm guys to see you," Chen Xiang once again said. Gu Dongchen frowned and said, "Are you speaking the truth?" "Of course, but we are going to risk our lives after all. When we return, will there be any rewards awaiting us?" Chen Xiang laughed and replied, "There will definitely be proper compensation." Gu Dongchen said, "Well, now that the candidates are determined, there will not be any further changes." Chen Xiang once again shouted, "Dean, if we all came back alive, couldn't you give each of us a bronze disciple and silver warrior tea?" "Itli?" Chen Xiang's words raised everyone's heartbeat in an instant. If they could get these 2 Itlis, they would be able to enter the King Martial Courtyard. Zhu Rong and the other 4 were all secretly excited, and eagerly awaiting Gu Dongchen's answer. Gu Dongchen considered for a moment before he glanced at Wu Kaming, only to see him nod his head. "No problem, as long as you return alive, we will reward 1,000,000 crystal stones, 500 true elemental dawn, as well as the bronze disciple and the silver warrior tea." "Itli," Gu Dongchen loudly proclaimed. This made Yun Xiaodao and the others extremely happy. However, they need to come back alive first. Yao Haixing and Hao Dongqing were both looking forward to the reward. However, they didn't think it was as simple as it seemed. They were clearly aware on how strong these Devil Path martial artists were compared to the other 3. "Disperse for the next 3 months. We of Elder Courtyard will do everything to guide you, so that you're sufficiently ready for the battle," Gu Dongchen said. At this point, many people present had some regrets. These rewards were just too tempting. Not to mention, the candidates were going to personally receive the Elder Courtyard's guidance. "Haixing, for these next 3 months, don't bother refining any dawn," Chen Xiang said. Yao Haixing was currently in the 4th level of the true martial realm. "Chen Xiang, where are you going to get 4 more people in the true martial realm? They shouldn't be in 1st level, right?" Hai Dongqing asked. "If they were all in 1st level, then it would affect their overall strength." Hao Dongqing was in 5th level of the true martial realm, and was quite powerful. In the extreme martial sect, he also had a decent reputation. "Uncle Hao, you can rest assured. They might be a little weaker, but they will absolutely not drag us down in any way," Chen Xiang replied, before taking his leave with Yun Xiaodao and the others. Before, Chen Xiang had asked Yun Xiaodao to search for some talented people to win over, people worthy to vigorously nurture. Yun Xiaodao had already found 5, and Chen Xiang was going to see them now. Chapter 224 Buying Popularity. Chapter 224 Buying Popularity. Out of those 5 people, 2 were currently performing missions outside the sect, and had yet to return, so there were only 3 people here at the moment. Zhu Rong and the others had not only carefully investigated these 5 people, but also observed them for a very long time. Their evaluation of them was very high. In a small room, Chen Xiang was looking at 3 young males, 2 of which had big physiques, and pretty much the same appearance. Apparently they were brothers. As for the other one, he looked like a scholar, although what he wore very simple garb, it was very tidy, and he had an amiable smile on his face. 2 brothers were called Lei Xionglin and Lei Zhong. While Lei Xionglin was the eldest, and was a stur, dy and forthright man. However, when he spoke it was often somewhat rude and hoa. RSE. On the other hand, his brother Lei Zhong was a simple and honest man. He usually spoke very few words, and even when he spoke, he really wasn't good at talking. However, both of them were very diligent, otherwise they would not have become 10th-level mortal martial realm martial artists at such young age. That man with a scholarly appearance was called Lien Mingdong. He was a very astute person, and had done many good deeds in the Tianmen city. However, anyone thinking of drawing in this kind of astute person would cause some suspicion in the back of their minds. Perhaps this person had some sort of scheme or plot. But Chen Xiang was fearless of such things. Lei Xiongling, Lei Zhong and Lina Mingdong all knew why they had been invited here today. They knew someone wanted to win over them. They had also experienced this kind of thing several times before. However, they had not been chosen in the end because they had no background. Inside the sect, before someone was drawn in, generally their background would be taken into consideration. If they had a good origin, such as a junior from a small family or a son or daughter of some big businessman, it would be easier for them to be won over. However, for Chen Xiang, this was not feasible, as those people would probably not loyal to him. In fact, they would easily betray him for the bounty on his head. Chen Xiang's name in the extreme martial sect reverberated like thunder. Some hated him, some liked him, some admired him, but the majority was simply jealous of him. Now Lei Xiongling and the others could see such a great master-like figure of the extreme martial sect. All of them were somewhat excited and surprised in their hearts. I won't waste time talking nonsense. Although we are meeting for first time, I think you should all be acquainted with one another. I've already investigated you all, I hope you don't mind. Chen Xiang slightly smiled. This was because I wanted to have more than a few trustworthy men. Lien Mingdong was slightly surprised for a moment. He glanced at Lei Xiongling and Lei Zhong, as all of them were the same kind of people. All three were pretty good friends, and were somewhat surprised about this. Are you willing to join us? Simple as that. If you want, then join us, that would be great. If not, then forget it. As for what to know about each other, that will come later. Yun Xiaodao said. Yun Xiaodao, Zhu Rong and the others were all young true martial realm martial artists. As a matter of fact, in the extreme martial sect, they were very famous. Besides, they were all juniors of big families. Lei Xiongling and Lei Zhong both glanced at each other. They were being drawn in by a group with such a good influence. They were certainly happy. However, at this moment, their eyes were filled with helplessness. Lien Mingdong said, "For Senior Brother Chen to be kind enough to invite us to join, we are extremely grateful. However, during our last mission, our group came in conflict with some people, and we also lost 2 of our companions." Zhu Rong laughed and said, "Are you worried that you will drag us into your conflict?" Lien Mingdong nodded his head. "Yes, I know senior brothers are all young and promising, but—" At this time Lei Xiongling roared, "Don't speak of this. Let's go, we'll manage our own affairs ourselves." Lei Zhong had a very simple-minded smile facing Chen Xiang and the others, and said, "If we join your group, we will only bring trouble for you, I'm sorry." Su Weilong coldly said, "Who is targeting you, and also killed your 2 companions? Although we have nothing to do with you, our investigations made us admire you, which was why we wanted to invite you guys to create a big group." Chen Xiang sighed and said, "If I'm not wrong, it should be other extreme martial sect disciples. Sigh, you're risking your lives with them, yet this is what happens. It is simply wastage of your own life. I have an opportunity to let you have life and death battle with Devil Path martial artists. This life and death fight is what you should be yearning for the most." Lei Xionglin's and Lei Zhong's entire body trembled, before Lei Xiongling immediately asked, "What opportunity?" Chen Xiang faintly smiled. According to the information, Lei Xionglin's and Lei Zhong's village had been ravaged by the Devil Path martial artists, which was why their hatred Devil Path martial artists stemmed into their very soul. "Since we have called you, we have put our trust in you. If you let us down, then it's just because our eyes could not discern people. The extreme martial sect will have to immediately send 10 disciples to a place where they will have to fight with the disciples of the Devil Path sections. On the behalf of you three, I have reserved 3 spots. However, you need to be in the true martial realm. Chen Xiang's words made Lei Xiongling and the others gasp. They were not same as the majority of people. Usually when people heard they needed to fight with Devil Path martial artists, they would be all worried. Especially those who put on airs of arrogance and elegance, they would all be worried about losing their pathetic little lives. They would be more than happy to have a compromise with the Devil Path sects, and share the rich resources of the Qinwu mainland with the Devil Path sections. But the deans of all major righteous sects understood what kind of people the Devil Path martial artists were. If they were allowed to grow, then the civilian populations and the righteous martial artists would have to bear the brunt of the damage. There would be no good days ahead. In order to suppress the Devil Path sects, a fierce battle was needed. Chen Xiang took out 6 building foundation dawn and said, I can give 2 building foundation dawn to each of you. Whether or not you can step into the true martial realm will be up to your talent, fortune, and luck. After you step into the true martial realm, whether or not you want to work together with us is all up to you. However, you absolutely cannot be like those other cowards in the extreme martial sect and not dare to fight with the Devil Path. Chen Xiang placed the 6 building foundation dawn on the table. Lian Mingdong, Lei Xiongling and Lei Zhong were all petrified. They continued to look at those 6 building foundation dan in amazement. They were all left speechless. Not to mention them, even Yun Xiaodao and the others could not help but be surprised. Chen Xiang had just given them 2 building foundation dawn each, however. He once again took out 6 more. I'm not giving these building foundation dan for nothing later, you have to return it to us. I want 200,000 crystal stones for each dan. If you feel like you can repay the debt in the future, then take it. Chen Xiang laughed and said, 500,000 crystal stones could not be considered an unpayable amount, nor a negligible amount. That being said, if they could enter the true martial realm, it wouldn't be difficult for them to earn that amount. However, they still required quite a bit of time. Lian Mingdong and the others all took 2 building foundation dawn. They looked at Chen Xiang with gratitude. They swore in their hearts they would follow Chen Xiang until death. He had given them an opportunity to become strong and take revenge. Otherwise, with their origin, God knows which month, year, or decade they would be able to enter the true martial realm. Or perhaps they would just remain in the 10th level of the mortal martial realm for the rest of their lives. After you enter the true martial realm, immediately seek Elder Wu, and let him make proper arrangements for you. At that time, tell him Chen Xiang sent you to find him. And one more thing, only eat 1 dan for now. If you can break through using 1, then you can leave the other for when you try to reach the 2nd level. Chen Xiang seriously instructed them. Lei Xiongling and the others didn't say anything, they just held their fists towards Chen Xiang, and followed Yun Xiaodao and the others out. Such a generosity was unable to be repaid just by saying thanks. They would use their actions to thank Chen Xiang for what he has done. Now, only 1 more candidate was needed. Chen Xiang could only go back to Elder Dan's king courtyard to find Elder Dan. After all, Wu Qianqian was the best final candidate for the position. He was just worried about Elder Dan hiding Wu Qianqian until her death. Chapter 225 S.H.I plus 2. Chapter 225 S.H.I plus 2 a TLN. From now on the infant soul of Chen Xiang, which we used to refer it as spirit, will be referred as divine soul from this chapter on. After returning to the extreme Dan King courtyard, Chen Xiang had just thought of knocking on Elder Dan's door when Elder Dan's voice suddenly came from inside. Did you come for Wu Qianqian? Elder Dan opened the door and asked. Chen Xiang nodded his head, now just lacking 1 person. Tomorrow I will take her to Dean. You definitely need to bring her back to me. Elder Dan said. No problem. Chen Xiang smiled and then quickly left. After he returned to his own private room, he took out the elemental spirit Dan. Although he only had one, it was still enough for his very immature divine soul. This time, the fight with the Devil Path martial artists in the southern wasteland would be very frigid, which caused Chen Xiang to feel some pressure. He knew these Devil Path sects were not vegetarians. Whoever they sent would definitely not be weak. The extreme martial sect had not forced anyone to go, everyone was voluntarily going to the battle. Hence, the 5th-level true martial realm people, these strong martial artists, would often not be partic. 1p. Aiding because they were deeply aware how powerful Devil Path martial artists were. In their opinion, Chen Xiang and these younglings were only seeking their death. Not to mention, they were going to the southern wasteland, which was one of the most dangerous places in the Qinwu mainland. Little dragon, if I just start cultivating Hi+2, what kind of power will I gain? Chen Xiang asked. In regards to Hi+2, it could be said he knew nothing at all. That depends on what kind of spiritual power you are going to learn. Long Xue said. To be precise, the spiritual power is state of the divine soul under which one use their power. It is probably similar to yours so-called divine martial skills, their principles are very similar. However, spiritual powers are very rare, even I only have 5 in my hands, nothing more. Chen Xiang frowned. The Dragon Clan's hereditary memories were exceptionally vast, however, according to Long Xue. She only had 5 spiritual powers. Chen Xiang had only seen her using the spiritual power called the 72 transformations. Turning into a small rabbit, small rat or something similar, he felt that this skill didn't serve much of a use. The spiritual power you planning to teach would not be that 72 transformations, right? Chen Xiang asked in contempt. Without any spiritual power, then cultivating the divine soul one would only be able to grow divine sense, but they would have no way use its power. Don't underestimate those 72 transformations. I know how to alter sound, change appearances, and turn into a small animal and hide myself. That's very useful. This spiritual power is listed as an abnormal spiritual power, and it's ranked in forefront. Long Xue said in a tender voice. Chen Xiang pondered for a while. After thinking over it again, it was indeed very bizarre and almost cheat-like. He asked, if I cultivate it, can I even transform my body? Of course you can. After you cultivate Hi+2, you will enter into the 2nd level. By then, your divine soul will have grown as old as you are, and then you can fuse it with your body. When that happens, your body will be transformed along with your divine soul. However, if you want to transform to the same extent as me, then there is still a long way to go. Long Xue proudly said. Chen Xiang got slightly excited, exclaimed, pretty mystical. Of course, otherwise it will not be called divine soul, spiritual power, and Hi+2. Long Xue said. Tielin. All 3 words have character, meaning divine or God. Chen Xiang swallowed down the elemental spirit Dan. What made him surprised was that the elemental spirit Dan was quickly digested by his body, producing a steady stream of spiritual essence that flowed into his consciousness, while the infant soul in his consciousness mindlessly absorbed that spiritual essence. As the infant soul absorbed the vast amount of spiritual essence, it grew by leaps and bounds. Chen Xiang could clearly see that originally 1 to 2 years old baby growing bigger by the second. This elemental spirit Dan should allow your divine soul to grow around 5 to 6 years old. Once it's finished, you can start cultivating spiritual power. In the next 3 months, you should be able to learn few transformations among the 72 transformations. To be precise, the most powerful aspect of spiritual power in attacking is the utilization of divine sense and true qi together. Long Xue said. Unwittingly, the divine soul in Chen Xiang's consciousness was already as big as 4 to 5 years old. He could now feel an even more intimate connection with his divine soul. However, it still could not called a true fusion, as that required it to become fused with his body. Only then could he transform his body under the mystical power of his divine soul. The divine soul's growth was the same as how people grow. During childhood, one would not understand anything, while as one gradually grew, they would begin to gain wisdom, which was also the best time for fusion. Quickly fuse. If you miss this opportunity, the fusion will be much more difficult down the road. Long Shui said. She could directly see inside Chen Xiang's consciousness. How? Chen Xiang hastily asked. Just simply think of yourself fusing with the divine soul. Chen Xiang immediately followed Long Shui's instruction and concentrated on thinking of fusing his body and divine soul together. Slowly, his body began to glitter in bursts of golden light one after the other as a bizarre feeling permeated throughout his whole body. 10 days pass, said. Chen Xiang heaved a long sigh and opened his eyes. He looked at his hands and feet. He made his finger curl a bit, but this action was not under the control of his body, but rather his divine soul. Even if his body was paralyzed by some drug now, he could still perform the same movement, because he could now use 2 different ways to move his body. One was using his mind to move the body like ordinary humans, while the other was using his divine sense to control his body. Chen Xiang sat cross-legged on the ground and breathed in a bit of air. With that mystical divine soul from before, he tried to control his body to levitate in the air as his legs gradually left the ground, becoming suspended in mid-air. Ha ha ha! Chen Xiang suddenly started laughing. This kind of feeling is too cool. Is this S.H.I+2? These past 10 days, Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu had always been paying attention to Chen Xiang's condition. They had seen him treading the path to S.H.I+2 step by step alone. It was very rare chance to see such a thing. If they could have the opportunity to contact S.H.I+2, then this would be tremendously helpful. Correct, but you better not let your divine soul leave your body for now. Your divine soul is currently too weak. It's just a little brat. With just one pinch I can kill you. Long Shui tenderly laughed and said. Chen Xiang nodded his head. This divine soul was quite similar to his own soul. However, it was able to be cultivated, and it could become even more powerful much easier than his actual soul. When can I let my own divine soul be isolated from my body? Chen Xiang asked in excitement. He thought it would be very cool to be able to do that sort of thing. It's best to wait till your divine soul has the strength of someone in the Nirvana realm. Of course, you could still do it with a 5th to 6th level of the true martial realm strength, but the premise is that no one more powerful than you can find you. Otherwise they will attack your divine soul, and it will be bothersome, especially if you can't escape. Even if you're just seriously injured, it might result in your soul getting destroyed and scattered. If just lightly, then your divine soul will suffer serious injuries. Long Shui said, that's why it's better to stay honest and let it mature inside your body. Let your body and divine soul both grow stronger together. This is the most formidable and safest way. Otherwise, my dragon clan would not need to cement their bodies before breaking their S.A.E.L. and just use our divine souls instead. Chen Xiang had taken yet another step on the road of S.H.I+2. This made him very excited. He first took a bath, before he quickly left Extreme Dan King Courtyard in order to find Yun Xiaodao and the others. He wanted to see how Lei Xiongling and the other 2 were doing. Chen Xiang entered a hall and soon saw Lien Mingdong, Lei Xiongling and Lei Zhong. The 3 people had pretty good complexions, their faces briming with a pleasant smile. When they saw Chen Xiang arrive, all 3 of them stood up one by one. Seeing their current appearance, Chen Xiang did not need ask whether they had entered the true martial realm or not. He chuckled and said, "Congratulations for entering the true martial realm." Chapter 226 Devil Path Plan. Chapter 226 Devil Path Plan. Lei Xiongling laughed and said, "This is all thanks to Senior Brother Chen. Because of the building foundation dawn you had given to us, we were able to enter the true martial realm. For this, we are extremely grateful." Lien Mingdong said, "Senior Brother Chen, we cannot thank you enough for your great graciousness. In the future, if you need any help from us, whatever it is, just say it." Lei Zhong spoke with a silly laugh. "I don't have brain, but I have power. In the future, I'll definitely repay Senior Brother Chen." Yun Xiaodao and the others secretly admired Chen Xiang's methods. All three of them had entered the true martial realm, and now they were loyal and devoted to Chen Xiang. While others have a lot more young retinues, their retinues were only in the 10th level of the mortal martial realm. Although they had more, all of them combined would still be incomparable to a first-level true martial realm martial artist. Chen Xiang chuckled and asked, "How many building foundation dawn did all of you ate?" "1. Lien Mingdong and the trio only ate 1. From this, it was evidently clear how big their potential was. They were just stuck at the bottleneck of the mortal martial realm, but if they cultivated with all their efforts for 10 to 20 years, even without the building foundation dawn, they would have eventually entered the true martial realm. "You're all here. Dean asked me to gather you." How Dongqing walked in. Lien Mingdong and the others had just stepped into the true martial realm 2 or 3 days ago, and already met with Wu Kaming and the Dean. As all three of them had just entered the true martial realm, going to the southern wasteland would be extremely dangerous for them. Of course, Chen Xiang, from the start, didn't want to make these 3 newcomers risk their lives in killing the Devil Path martial artists. Going to the southern wasteland was not just for the compet. 1. Tie-in, otherwise there would be no need to go the southern wasteland. If one so wished, they could simply find a safe place in the southern wasteland and hide themselves for the sake of surviving. Finally, whoever had more people surviving, they could claim themselves as the winner. That was why the biggest challenge was surviving. Survive in that dangerous land and avoid being hunted down. Those were the most crucial. However, Chen Xiang could still not understand why would Devil Path sects propose to go there. In Wu Kaming's courtyard, there were a total of 10 people, including Chen Xiang and the others. He also saw Wu Qianqian, however, since there were several elders as well as the dean present here. He couldn't just go and have a conversation. Everyone is here. Sigh, honestly, this trip is very dangerous for you youngsters, especially those who had just recently entered the true martial realm. Gu Dongchen sighed. Elder Dan said, "How about I go and bring those timid guys here? If 10 5th-level true martial realm martial artists would go, then it would be the most powerful lineup." Gu Dongchen shook his head. "No need, the others are not necessarily going to send their strongest. The Devil Path sects may not send their most powerful disciples either. We all know this compet. 1. Tie-in is proposed by the Devil Path sects, and both the time and the location are according to them. Moreover, the purpose of this compet. 1. Tie-in is not to compete in strength, but to compete who can live longer." Wu Kaming nodded his head and said, "If comparing strength, those Devil Path disciples are not much better than us, otherwise, they would not have go through all this trouble." They proposed the location of the compet. 1. Tie-in in the southern wasteland mountain range. Maybe it's because their ability to adapt is way better, and they can also use the terrain and various dangers to sneak attack our people. Chen Xiang agreed, "Yes, maybe they don't even need to act, people will surely die in there. If their surviving ability is better than us, maybe at the end, all of them will be surviving, and then they will certainly win. This way they could easily win against those martial artists stronger than them, and they could also wait for the death of a few true martial realm martial artists of the enemy along the way." Gu Dongchen said, That's why when you go there, don't think you have to risk your life into killing the other party. Of course, if someone is alone, everyone together with all their might can kill him. However, pay close attention if any kind of trap set by them. Among the righteous sect, our extreme martial sect is sending the largest number of people. The beast martial sect and true martial sect are only sending 4 party. 1p ants. The Danxiang Taoyuan and the Divine Weapon Heavenly Empire are sending 7 each, and as for the remaining Lotus Island, Icewind Valley and the Proud Sword Sect, all of them are just sending 6 each. Wu Kaming said, "We are sending 10 there. As for teamwork, Chen Xiang must leave all of you. This guy is a troublemaker. Moreover, he has a bounty of 15 million, so whether it's the righteous or the devil path, both will be eyeing him for his head." The corners of Chen Xiang's mouth slight twitched, however. What Wu Kaming and the others ordered him to do was also the correct decision. Otherwise, he would affect the whole team. Yun Xiaodao and Lei Xiongling, as well as the others, were somewhat reluctant though. All of them revered Chen Xiang, and they were thinking of wandering in the world with Chen Xiang. However, they had to listen to Gu Dongchen. "Chen Xiang, you act alone. You have the vermilion bird fire wings and rich fighting experience. You have killed a lot more people stronger than you. Your purpose to go there is to kill the Devil Path martial artists, and at the same time, protect the disciples of the other sections. When the disciples of the righteous sect are getting attacked, you need to come out to rescue. As for the other 9 people, you will stay together and cannot be separated. In the next 3 months we will train you and make you act in harmony." Gu Dongchen spoke. Chen Xiang suddenly thought whether the Divine Weapon Heavenly Empire and the Icewind Valley were going to send Xue Xianxian and Leng Yulan. Both of them were quite powerful in their generation, and they were also the focus of training in their respective sections. Chen Xiang had some contradiction in his heart. If they were there, he would be very happy because he could meet with them. But at the same time, he was also worried. If they went there, then they would certainly have to face danger. After much deliberation, he felt it was better if those 2 didn't go there, because it was too dangerous. He prayed Lu Menger would not send them. "Good, now all of you should go with Elder Lao to a secret place for training. Chen Xiang, you stay, we have something to tell you," Gu Dongchen said. Yun Xiaodao and the other 8 followed a hunchbacked old man out. After they went away, only then did Wu Kaming spoke. "Young martial uncle, how did you suddenly find 3 martial artists who just entered true martial realm? If they are to join, then you are only killing them. These 3 have pretty good foundation. Surely young martial uncle gave them building foundation dawn." Elder Dan spoke from the side. Both Wu Kaming and Gu Dongchen didn't know that Chen Xiang had so many building foundation dawn. They also didn't know that Chen Xiang could refine building foundation dan. If it was spread out that Chen Xiang had so many building foundation dawn in his grasp, it would shake the entire Chenwu mainland. Gu Dongchen and Wu Kaming immediately thought Chen Xiang was developing his own forces. Doing so was not wrong in any way. Chen Xiang laughed and said, "I'm not going to conceal it from you, this martial uncle knows how to refine building foundation dan. If you want, I can sell it to you a little cheaper, just 500,000 crystal stones for one. If you want, you just have to say a word." "What?" Gu Dongchen shouted in shock. It came as a surprise to him that Chen Xiang could actually refine building foundation dan. Wu Kaming also dumbfoundedly stared at Chen Zane. Although he and Gu Dongchen didn't know how to refine dawn, they still knew how difficult it was to refine building foundation dawn. Above all, it was required for an alchemist to be prodigal in wasting enough materials. "It's true." Elder Dan coldly snorted. However, in her heart, she was secretly laughing. Chen Xiang was clearly planning to cheat Gu Dongchen and Wu Kaming. She knew that for Chen Xiang, obtaining the building foundation dawn was nothing. Chapter 227 Transformation Technique. Chapter 227 Transformation Technique. Seeing Elder Dan's confirmation, both Wu Kaming and Gu Dongchen could not help but gulp a cold lump in shock. Chen Xiang could actually refine building foundation Dan, and it also seemed he had no small amount of them. Young martial uncle, how many do you have? Gu Dongchen hastily asked. Over the years, the disciples entering the true martial realm in the extreme martial sect were getting increasingly lesser. 10. Chen Xiang smiled and said, You want? But I cannot sell you so many all of a sudden. But if you want all in one breath, then so be it. Either give me 1,200 true elemental Dan, or give me 600,000 crystal stones. Gu Dongchen secretly cursed Chen Xiang, then said, I first have to consult with those old men of the elder courtyard. Hurry up, do not blame me when they are gone. Chen Xiang laughed and said, then followed Elder Dan to the extreme Dan King courtyard. The advantage of the building foundation Dan laid in its ability to release a large amount of rich true qi at once. It could allow a 10th level mortal martial realm martial artists to break through their bottleneck in one fell swoop, which other Dan could not replace in any way. Because the building foundation Dan were rare, it was even more expensive. Chen Xiang could not let a large number of building foundation Dan flow out, otherwise they would not have any rarity, and thus their value would diminish. That was why he intended to leave them for his own use, or sell them at a high price to whom he was familiar with. If opportunity presides, he would take them out for auction. Have you used the entire Azure Profound Fruits? After returning to the extreme Dan King courtyard, Elder Dan asked. Failed good several times, however. I still have more than 100. Chen Xiang laughed while Elder Dan lightly snorted. She was secretly jealous of Chen Xiang. He was only at true martial realm, yet he already had so many building foundation Dan in his grasp. If used sparingly, more than 100 true martial realm martial artists could be nurtured. However, Chen Xiang didn't intend to nurture so many. He didn't want so many. As long as they were fine together with him, they would do many things. Few could facilitate managing other things for him. Now are you planning to learn a divine martial skill? Elder Dan asked. Are you going to teach me? Chen Xiang laughed and said. Of course. Chen Xiang shook his head and said, Not now. I have more important things to do. Hey, if you take off your mask to teach me, then that's more like it. Humph, you want to learn, but you won't learn. At the time of your death, don't blame me. Elder Dan softly snorted and said, then angrily left. Chen Xiang was baffled. He could not understand why would Elder Dan would suddenly become angry. He returned to his private room, sat cross-legged, then asked, Little dragon, are you going to teach me those spiritual powers? Chen Xiang thought it was better to learn spiritual power first, because it would allow him to possess an even more powerful ability to survive, especially that spiritual power of myriad transformations. I can teach you now, but whether you can learn or not is all up to you. Long Xue's voice was filled with contempt, as if Chen Xiang didn't have a fat chance to learn it. Little girl, don't underestimate me. Chen Xiang laughed and said, Quickly teach me. First I'm going to teach you 72 transformations. With your current weak divine soul, it would be just about right for you to transform into a small animal. As for those bigger ant. 1. Ties, don't even think about it. Long Xue said, Currently, even I can only transform into an adult tiger at most. It's enough, transforming into a small bird should do it. Chen Xiang was suddenly excited, thinking of himself transforming into a bird and flying away, making his enemies unable to notice him in the slightest. Of course you can, but first you have to learn. Long Xue laughed and said, At that time, just don't get eaten. But with your body, even if you encountered any powerful attack, you will not immediately die. Those who have divine soul, as long as they don't encounter someone many times powerful than them, generally speaking, they will not die. Chen Xiang rubbed his hands. At this time, Long Xue began imparting him the so-called 72 transformations, spiritual power. It had lot of content, but fortunately, Long Shui was pious. Sing it through her divine sense, fast and convenient. Chen Xiang was more and more certain that Su Mei Yao and Bai Yu both were from the heavenly realm, because this divine sense transmitting ability or anything similar was something he still hadn't seen yet. This 72 transformations could not specifically transform into 72 things, but instead into various kinds. However, generally speaking, there was no need for so many. That was why it was developed into 72 basic transformations. After grasping these, as long as one's divine soul was strong enough, one could truly transform into myriads of things. Its difficulty lay in the utilization of divine soul to control the body, then in releasing a bizarre power from the divine soul. Long Shui called this power as spiritual power, and its user could use their own mind to control the transformation of body. At the same time, in accordance with some method of applying the spiritual power, one could also silently chant some spells in their mind. When the spiritual power flowed in various profound patterns in the body, one had to chant a spell. With the spell, a sonic shock would be then released in the spirit veins, stimulating the spirit veins to display the spiritual power. The process was somewhat complicated, but if one could get familiar with its application, they would be able to transform in a very short time. Just like Long Shui, she could transform in the blink of an eye. 3 days pious, said, Chen Xiang had remained sitting cross-legged, without any movement. In his mind he heard Long Shui's series of crisp and clear laughter coming, and in his heart, he secretly despised her. Little girl, I still have not learned the application of the spiritual power. Wait for me to learn it, then I'll show you. Chen Xiang said. He was telling the truth. It was indeed somewhat difficult to control the technique. He had spiritual power flowing through all his limbs and numerous bones, which were composed of various spirit veins linked together. He was attempting to trigger the effect of these spirit veins using the spell, and that way, he could transform his body. If he wanted to revert back, as long as the linked spirit veins were broken, he would immediately revert back. Once again, 3 days pious, said, when suddenly, a golden aura burst out from Chen Xiang's body. Chen Xiang's lips squirmed as he quickly chanted a spell, which was then followed by a flash of golden light, causing Long Shui to suddenly let out a tender cry. You actually learned it so quickly! Long Shui tenderly shouted. Chen Xiang had indeed learned it, but now he could only transform into a small bird. He was fluttering his wings while flying inside the private room, and what made him feel mystical was that he did not feel any kind of change in his body whatsoever, nor any reduction in his strength. He could still use his true qi. Currently the divine soul is managing your body state, that's why in your sense, as long as you willed it, you will move. However, others would only see you flying. Long Shui said. Chen Xiang indeed didn't need to control the flapping of his wings. With just a thought, he could move anywhere he thought. It was very mystical, and even if he had not transformed, he could still rely on his divine soul's spiritual power to make him levitate. This was the strongest ability of the SHI+2. A thought suddenly arose in Chen Xiang's heart. He left through the window, then flew towards Elder Dan's residence. He has always been curious about Elder Dan's appearance, and now that he had the opportunity to peep, how could he let it go? After he transformed into a little bird, he had converged his breath, and he looked no different than any ordinary bird. You are so bad. You are not allowed to go. Long Shui, after seeing Chen Xiang actually flew to peep, immediately shouted. I'm not going to look at her taking a bath. I will just peep at what's underneath that mask of hers. Chen Xiang mischievously laughed and said, Humph, if you use the spiritual power to do this kind of nasty thing, I'm going to ignore you in the future. Long Shui angrily said, Little girl, didn't you often imitate me and speak some nasty things? Moreover, you yourself had also often peeped at Sister Mei Yao and Sister Yu. Hey, haven't you also seen me? Chen Xiang laughed and said, As of this moment, he was hovering beside the already opened window of Elder Dan's residence. Chapter 228, Heavenly Dragon Seal. Chapter 228, Heavenly Dragon Seal TLN. Sorry guys, first I was sick and then now I'm moving to Mumbai, so was busy this week. We will get back on schedule starting tomorrow. Long Shui softly snorted before speaking. That's different, I only peeked at you. You're not going to blame me or be angry. Besides, I only spoke those words to deepen the feelings between you and those girls. I was thinking about your well-being. Chen Xiang flew into the room, but contrary to his expectations, he didn't find Elder Dan here, so he reckoned she was in her private room. It was not easy to enter the private room, so he intended to wait for her here. Night time came and Chen Xiang finally heard some sound. At this time, he had already consumed more than half of his spiritual power. However, he felt it was worth the effort. Very soon, he would be able to see Elder Dan's true appearance. After Elder Dan walked into the room, she took off her black gown first. Underneath the gown, she wore a snow-white longette, outlining her graceful figure. After removing it, she then proceeded to remove her mask. When Chen Xiang's antic 1p Asian had reached the extreme, Chen Xiang fiercely started cursing, because Elder Dan's visage was covered in white light. She was actually so strict, and she would not allow anyone to see her face no matter what. But for what reason must she do this? Chen Xiang flew away in disappointment. Elder Dan had already noticed that small bird. She felt strange and had intended to attack, but in the end, she didn't really take any action. Chen Xiang was surprised in his heart, so sped up and hurriedly flew away. Elder Dan was a Nirvana realm martial artist, and just with an arbitrary wave of her sleeve, she could blast him to pieces. His whole body was drenched in cold sweat, so he decided not to do this kind of dangerous thing ever again. Haha, you've finally learned how to be afraid. Long Shui grinned and said, after returning, you should learn how to turn into a turtle. With his current spiritual power, he could only turn into some small-sized creatures. After returning, he learned to turn into a squirrel and a gopher, allowing him to hide in the wilderness. In order to be proficient in transformation, he practiced for 1 month. However, he was still not able to transform in the blink of an eye like Long Shui. He still required a few seconds before he able to transform. Chen Xiang originally wanted to go to Yun Xiaodao and the others. However, he knew they were in special training, and it was the most efficient method to improve their strength. At the same time, various elders were guiding them in learning some powerful martial skills, as well as examining their shortcomings and improving their overall abilities. Visiting them would only cause them to be disturbed. These guys made it big time. So many old men are guiding them at the same time. Chen Xiang laughed and said. Afterwards, he irrigated the various precious and rare herbs in the little herbal garden, and the 2 azure profound tree planted beforehand had already grown up. Soon they would blossom. Of course, the 5-colored lotus he had planted had already began germinating. These 5-colored lotus were different from ordinary lotus. These lotus could be planted by just using the lotus seeds, and it also didn't require to grow in the water. They mainly relied on the absorption of the 5 elements spirit qi to grow. Elder Dan oftenly came to observe Chen Xiang's herbal garden. She discovered that the growth of the flowers and the plants in the herbal garden was very quick, and she had already guessed Chen Xiang had some means to accelerate the growth of these spirit herbs. This was essentially heaven-defying, and at this point, she knew it was not some trivial matter, so she absolutely could not allow anyone to know or tell anyone. In order to solidify the defense of this small herbal garden, even Wu Qianqian couldn't casually enter. You also can't loaf around. By that time, you have to return alive. Elder Dan, while watching Chen Xiang irrigate those spirit herbs, coldly spoke. I know, in any case I still have to beat you and then marry you. Although I don't know your appearance, your figure is still good and in line with my standard. Chen Xiang grinned and replied. Elder Dan, seeing Chen Xiang smiling mischievously, without even an ounce of tension, coldly harumphed before taking her leave. After irrigating the entire garden, Chen Xiang returned to the private room and continued cultivation. He was now familiarizing himself with the various devil techniques and divine exercises, and at the same time, he was also preparing to learn an offensive spiritual power. Next is the spiritual power called Heavenly Dragon Seal. It is also one of the most terrifying spiritual power of my dragon clan. After casting, it would take away your spiritual power and a part of your true chi. Afterwards, it will be followed up with the absorption of a large amount of spirit chi in the surrounding before transforming into a huge dragon claw which will descend from the sky. Casting this spiritual power requires a little time, that's why it is only suitable to attack while hiding and attacking from a distance, Long Shui said. In order to learn this spiritual power, Chen Xiang had no choice but to leave the extreme martial sect. He quietly went to the mountain forest outside the city to learn it, and just like the 72 transformations, he first needed to arouse the spiritual power to flow in his body, form profound spirit patterns, and finally chant the spell to cast it. However, it was different from the 72 transformations. The Heavenly Dragon Seal required true chi as well, and at this time, Chen Xiang released a large amount of true chi. The true chi, under the guise of the mystical spiritual power, without any sound, aura or dissipation, quietly drifted away into the sky, before starting to absorb the spirit chi in the surroundings. Chant the spell, Long Shui shouted. Chen Xiang hastily started chanting. However, the chanting was inaccurate, causing him to eventually fail. He had already failed more than 30 times, and if not for the large number of true elemental Dan he had used to restore his true chi, he simply could not even try it. Chen Xiang had already stayed deep in the mountains for a month. During the day, he learned to cast the Heavenly Dragon Seal, while in the night, he cultivated while creating golden dragon saliva. He didn't loaf. This was all for the survival in the southern wasteland. In the evening, the clouds were surging high in the sky. If he didn't pay any special attention, it was very difficult to realize that a large amount of spirit chi in the radius of a couple li was already surging towards the peak of 100 Orjiang high mountain. As Chen Xiang was observing that very mountain from far away, his lips slightly moved. He was chanting some bizarre spell. Followed with the end of movement of Chen Xiang's mouth, a huge dragon claw, which was glistening in 5 to 6 colors, suddenly appeared at that mountain top. However, that dragon claw actually resembled that of a human's. It was devoid of any scales, but it had a hook-like claws. This was precisely the Heavenly Dragon Seal. It ruthlessly pressured down from the sky, and in the blink of an eye, it fiercely pressed upon the crest of that 100-so-high Zhang mountain. Followed by a thunderous and explosive sound coupled with a fierce tremor running through the ground, a large number of crushed stones and mud spread towards all 4 directions like smoke. In just a few blinks of an eye, that mountain was completely flattened. Fierce! Chen Xiang dumbfoundedly exclaimed. He had not consumed much of his true chi and spiritual power, however. He was still able to create such an effect. If he had used some more of his strength, it would have been even more frightening. It was not very far from the Tianmen city, and he had actually created such a huge commotion. It would definitely be noticed by the extreme martial sect, so Chen Xiang, at first notice, immediately left and returned back to the extreme Dan King courtyard. After arriving in the herbal garden, Chen Xiang once again saw Elder Dan here. After Chen Xiang's disappearance, the entire herbal garden was taken care of by Elder Dan. She was an alchemist, so she naturally knew how to raise these spirit herbs, and she was even more serious than Chen Xiang. She was actually more careful while taking care of the spirit herbs, even though she didn't really have a share in any of these spirit herbs. Once Chen Xiang came in, he immediately noticed the 3 azure profound tree had already bloomed. The relatively older one had 50 flowers blooming, and as for the other 2, Each had only 20, and regarding this kind of shocking matter, Elder Dan had long been accustomed to. Now, there was not even an ounce of surprise on her. The next time you leave for a long time, tell me before leaving. There was no one to tend to these spirit herbs, how would it grow well? Elder Dan had a look of reproach on her face while speaking. Chapter 229, Feeling Proud and Elated. Chapter 229, Feeling Proud and Elated. For a martial artist, 3 months weren't that long, and they very quickly said. Chen Xiang was now in the 3rd level of the true martial realm, and furthermore, he had already cultivated a couple of powerful devil techniques. His strength had gone beyond a 4th level true martial realm martial artist, and almost equal to a 5th level true martial realm martial artist. However, this was only true under the case in which he was facing ordinary true martial realm martial artists. If he encountered someone with a better spiritual vein, or with formidable martial skill, he would be no match for them. After Yun Xiaodao and the others had their special training, Chen Xiang felt there was too big of difference between them from now and before. Each one of them had a great drive, had a very fierce momentum, and the true qi within their body was also very dense. At a moment's notice, they were all ready to go. What made him surprised was that Lei Xiongling and the others, these 3, had actually entered the 2nd level of the true martial realm. They had taken the 2nd building foundation Dan not long ago to advance, and during the 3 months of training, all of them had eaten a lot of good dawn. These days, Chen Xiang had not seen Elder Dan at all. Elder Dan just said she was going to take a walk alone. You first say goodbye to your families, I'll take you to the meeting place after 3 days. Gu Dongchen said. Yao Haixing returned back to his residence. He had also planted some spirit herbs, and he needed to hand it over to someone to take care of them. Zhu Rong followed his uncle, Hao Dongqing, and left. As for Yun Xiaodao and Su Weilong, they left together and returned to their respective family. Chen Xiang also wanted to return to the secular world, but he didn't have enough time. He just decided to wait till his return from the southern wasteland, then he will take a trip back to visit his family and go take a look at the secular world. He was curious how much it has developed since he left. Qianqian, are you not going to go back? Chen Xiang asked. I'm not going to go, there is no one in my family. Wu Qianqian somewhat dejectedly replied. I'm sorry. Chen Xiang heaved a sigh in his heart and hastily said. Doesn't matter, I will first return to the extreme Dan King courtyard, I still have to learn alchemy. Wu Qianqian showed a bright and beautiful smile. She appeared to be one very strong girl. After Wu Qianqian walked, Chen Xiang looked at Lian Mingdong and the others. You? I decided to wait till we come back from that ghastly place, then we will go. Liang Mingdong smiled and said. Our families had already been devastated by those devil path bastards. If it wasn't for the dean, I would have already gone to kill 1 or 2 bastards personally. Lei Xiongling furiously said. No way, we have to listen to the dean. I also want to slaughter devil path guys. Lei Zhong, while scratching his head, said with a silly laugh. Then let's go for a drink, my treat. Chen Xiang laughed and said. While chatting, the 4 of them went towards the entrance, and just as they walked out of the door, they heard a howl from behind. You 3, stop. Chen Xiang and the others immediately turned around. They saw 10 or so boys coming from behind, and all of them were in the 10th level of the mortal martial realm. They had fierce expression on their faces, as though they were ready to strike at any moment. Before Chen Xiang came to know Lei Xiongling and the others, these 3 had already provoked some guys, and moreover, the guys they provoked were the ones who caused 2 of their companions to die. Are your 2 companions killed by them? Chen Xiang gloomily asked. Yeah, it's them. Father is definitely going to cripple these mongrels. Lei Xiongling clenched his fist and furiously replied. Chen Xiang nodded his head. Kill 2 and cripple the others. What? Kill 2? Lei Xiongling was slightly surprised for a moment. They were at the entrance of the extreme martial sect, so fighting was not a problem. However, if someone suddenly lost their life, the extreme martial sect was definitely going to care about it. Senior Brother Chen, it is somewhat inappropriate. After all, we are still at the entrance. Liang Mingdong said with a frown. If you have to kill them, it's better to kill them in a place where no one is around. Lei Zhong was also somewhat worried. Chen Xiang laughed and said, Rest a.s. Assured, you're going to the southern wasteland right away. Dean can't do anything to you, and besides, it is right and proper for them to pay life with life. They had killed 2 of your companions, and you should make them pay blood with blood. Good. Lian Mingdong's complexion turned ruthless as he nodded his head and spoke. Lei Xiongling clenched his fists tighter, then laughed and said, You group of bastards. Today, Father will not let you off. While speaking, his brother rushed out, and Lian Mingdong followed behind them. These 3 were all rather speedy, and besides, they had not even used all of their power. The group of boys didn't even have the chance to dodge before the huge body of Lei Xiongling and Lei Zhong struck upon them. A few of them had flown about before colliding in the entrance's wall, causing them to lose their consciousness in an instant. Lian Mingdong was not as brutal as his 2 brothers. He used a fan and very lightly slapped upon those guys' faces. Even though his attacks seemed gentle, that fan was followed by howling winds, causing the tooth of those he struck to flew out as they spat out blood. This was the strength of the true martial realm. When they had encountered these guys before, they were just in the 10th level of the mortal martial realm. Even if they went all out, they weren't able to cause any injuries to these guys. However, now with just a casual attack of theirs, they had already heavily injured them. Are you all true martial realm martial artists? A young man asked. The previous handsome face of his was now beyond recognition due to the pounding of fists from Lei Xiongling. After Lei Xiongling and the others received training from the Elder Courtyard, it would be even difficult for martial artists who had been in the 2nd level of the true martial realm for many years to win against them. Besides, each of them was rather inherently talented, and their true chi as well was very vigorous. Right, go die, wastrels who are afraid of the strong and can only bully the weak. Lei Xiongling coldly said as he vigorously pounded a foot on that man's chest. In an instant, that man's chest was dyed in blood. Lian Mingdong opened his steel fan, lightly struck as he cut one man's throat, scaring the SHI plus T out of the rest from the group. The group was now aimlessly shouting, some were crying for help and some were begging for mercy. Brothers, let's go, let's drink, Chen Xiang shouted. Lian Mingdong and the others were usually unbearably bullied by these aristocrats, but today they could feel proud and elated. In their hearts they were completely satisfied, and they knew that all they could have today was all given by Chen Xiang. In the hotel, Chen Xiang and the others were drinking while talking about ambitions, women, and boasting about majestic deeds they had done in the past. When they returned from the hotel, it was already late at night. After Chen Xiang entered the extreme Dan King courtyard, he saw a lamp lit in a room. It was Wu Qianqian's. Chen Xiang had not seen Wu Qianqian for a long time. She was in possession of a fire spirit and moreover, she was also an alchemist. Chen Xiang had always been very curious about her whereabouts. He went over and knocked on Wu Qianqian's door. After Wu Qianqian opened the door and saw Chen Xiang, she mischievously smiled and said, "Something wrong? Can't I come and find you without any reason at all?" Chen Xiang laughed and said. Wu Qianqian welcomed Chen Xiang into a small hall and offered him tea. Chen Xiang, ask her to release the blue star fire, you also release a bit of your fire spirit. See what will happen after your heaven's sun fire fused with hers. Long Shui curiously spoke. The fusion of flames released by different fire spirits was very rare, because not many people had a fire spirit. However, in the extreme Dan King courtyard, there were actually 3, and this was but a very rare opportunity. Chapter 230 Fire Spirit Fusion. Chapter 230 Fire Spirit Fusion. Su Meiyao's eyes lit up, and quickly urged Chen Xiang to give it a try. Wu Qianqian was also hailed as a leader amongst the younger female disciples in the extreme martial sect. Not only was she a startling beauty, she was rather talented as well. Of course, the only reason she dared to go into the southern wasteland was because she had great confidence in her ability to survive. All of this stemmed from her having the blue star fire spirit. Qianqian, where have you been all these days? I missed you very much, but I couldn't find you. Elder Dan hid you very well. Chen Xiang mischievously laughed and said. He was already acquainted with Wu Qianqian, which was why he could so openly joke with her. Wu Qianqian twirled her hair, it lay on her chest, making her appear even more charming and mature. It was a rather seductive scene. Did you really miss me? Wu Qianqian sweetly smiled. She was very strictly dressed, making Chen Xiang somewhat disappointed, as he was not able to appreciate her graceful figure. Elder Dan instructed that I can't tell you. But, I can tell you, all this time I've been learning how to conceal my blue flame, look. After saying this, Wu Qianqian released a bundle of red flames. Elder Dan said that only after I reach the Nirvana realm do I not need to conceal my flame. Chen Xiang laughed and said, Qianqian, can you release a tiny bit of your blue flame for me? That should be just about enough. Wu Qianqian didn't know what Chen Xiang wanted to do, but she readily agreed. Of course I can. If not for you, I wouldn't even be able to fuse with this powerful flame. When you were fusing with the blue star fire spirit, you were holding me so tightly you even left scratches on my back. Ha ha. Chen Xiang laughed, making Wu Qianqian chuckle, and also somewhat flushed red with shame. Wu Qianqian spread her jade-like palm, her pretty eyes staring at Chen Xiang. She stuck her tongue out before she smiled and said, This flame is very powerful, be careful. While speaking, a bundle of blue flames appeared on her palm. Chen Xiang carefully observed the blue star fire. He knew Wu Qianqian had gained a very high level of control over her flames. After all, even though she released extremely powerful flames, the temperature of the room didn't turn hot, and could even be said that it didn't change at all. Chen Xiang suddenly extended his hand, and grabbed a hold of those blue flames, causing Wu Qianqian to tenderly shout out in fear. However, an even more astonished look soon appeared on her face. Originally, she thought Chen Xiang would definitely be burned, but contrary to her belief, nothing actually happened. She herself started having doubts whether her blue star flame was actually hot or not. Are you all right? Wu Qianqian asked with a look of worry. It's nothing. Chen Xiang grinned before releasing his own fire spirit. Wu Qianqian just saw that blue flame on her palm being wrapped up by a seemingly ordinary heavenly sun flame of Chen Xiang. Soon after, the blue flames began to change as the two flames started fusing together. Wu Qianqian was left in a trance after seeing this. She knew Chen Xiang was very formidable. She was perfectly clear about this from the vermilion bird divine exercise she learned from him. After seeing her flames fuse with Chen Xiang's, she secretly reckoned Chen Xiang also had obtained a fire spirit. The blue star flame is absorbing your heavenly sun flame. It's as if the heavenly sun flame is deliberately allowing the blue star flame to absorb it. These two fire spirits actually don't reject each other. Long Shui exclaimed in surprise. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu also held very strong interests regarding this matter. The blue-colored flame turned purple very, very slowly. The fire spirit was actually evolving. The previous blue flame had actually turned into purple flame after fusing with the heavenly sun flame. Chen Xiang and Wu Qianqian were both extremely shocked. The heavenly sun spirit fire holds the Ti of the fire spirit king. This scene is actually not that surprising. Sure enough, it is totally within my expectations. This dragoness is really too smart. Long Shui proudly said. Cannon behind the horse, I have not heard you talk about this before. Chen Xiang retorted with his divine sense, splas. Hi plus in cold water on Long Shui. Chen Xiang returned the flames to Wu Qianqian, which easily went back into her body. Chen Xiang, do you also have a fire spirit? Wu Qianqian asked in a low voice with a perturbed look on her face. Chen Xiang nodded his head. He knew Wu Qianqian had a fire spirit, so it didn't matter too much if he also let her know he had one. Your fire spirit is very formidable, it could actually make my flame evolve. Wu Qianqian's pretty eyes twinkled. A trace of a charming smile appeared on her face. She was happy for Chen Xiang. She knew that he was inherently a very talented alchemist, and if he didn't have fire spirit, that would definitely be regretful. If I have time, I'll think of more ways to make your fire spirit evolve. What exactly can we do? Chen Xiang rubbed his chin while pondering this matter. Wu Qianqian felt a rush of warmth in her heart and tenderly said, if it brings negative effects on you, then forget it. For me, the blue flames are enough. I'll go and bring some dawn refined by me for you to appraise. Just as Wu Qianqian turned around, Long Shui imitated Chen Xiang's voice and said, it might be possible with the integration of men and women, how about we try it and see? While Chen Xiang was pondering, he heard Long Shui's words imitating his voice, and it seemed like he was struck by lightning. He certainly thought about this approach, however, it was merely a thought. He couldn't fathom how this little girl had so many dirty ideas in her mind. It was all right if she said it out loud, but she should not have spoken while imitating his voice, and that too in front of a girl. This totally ruined his positive image. Little dragoness, your father must have been a very dirty dragon, to actually have pa-s said on so many shameful memories and ideas onto you. Chen Xiang immediately cursed. When Wu Qianqian heard Chen Xiang's words, she was immediately petrified then and there. She didn't expect Chen Xiang to actually make such a request, even more so, this straightforwardly. That being said, it also seemed like it was for her well-being. Her face immediately flushed red all the way to the tips of her ears. The current mood was extremely embarrassing. Chen Xiang could not wait to grab a hold of Long Shui and spank her little ass and see if she ever dared to talk nonsense again. Chen Xiang forcefully coughed twice. Qianqian, show me the dawn you've refined. Wu Qianqian also heaved a sigh. Both of them came to a tacit understanding to forget what happened just a moment ago. Chen Xiang knew the mess had been swept under the rug and suddenly heaved a long sigh. Little dragoness, if you want to make trouble, don't do it in such a grand way. Someday, it will definitely come back to haunt me. This father's pure image is being ruined again and again by you. Pooh! You're pure? Last time you turned into a little bird and thought of peeking at Elder Dan bathing. Also, I was creating an opportunity for you. Originally Wu Qianqian only had a slightly good impression of you. But because you got entangled with her afterwards, she might be willing to do it with you. You're really stupid, such a great opportunity was actually missed by you. If it had come true, it would have been possible for you to relax before going to the southern wasteland. Long Shui tenderly snorted and said. Chen Xiang didn't know what he should say. He suddenly felt he could not see Long Shui as a little girl anymore. She definitely had very rich experience regarding how to deal with the women. All male dragons are womanizers. She definitely inherited this trait from her father's side. Chen Xiang, engrave this point in your mind. Perhaps you may be eaten by this little dragon in the future, and not even your bones would be left. Su Meiyao said with a serious look on her face throughout her warning to Chen Xiang before she broke down and started giggling. Chen Xiang secretly cursed in his heart and thought, sooner or later, there will be a day where I'll eat you and not even leave your bones. Now Chen Xiang knew the heavenly sun flame could evolve other fire spirits, but he had not found any other good ways to accomplish this feat otherwise. He could help Elder Dan and Wu Qianqian evolve both of their fire spirits to its highest peak. Chapter 231 Gather. Chapter 231 Gather. Wu Qianqian took out the dawn she had refined. After Chen Xiang saw them, he could not help but become astonished. True elemental Dan? You can already refine it? Chen Xiang took a true elemental Dan in his hand and carefully observed it. Top-grade quality. How many dawn can you refine at once? I could only refine 3 dawn. Wu Qianqian replied. Seeing Chen Xiang with such an astonished expression, she was very happy in her heart. Chen Xiang mischievously laughed. I can refine 5 dawn, you have to work even more harder. I'll be waiting for the time when you are able to refine 5 dawn in a single try. I'll help you with the ingredients for refining true elemental Dan. Just give me 4 dawn, and as for the last one, take it as your reward. As for the failed refinements, just leave it to me. Chen Xiang had great amount of true elemental Dan ingredients, however. He didn't have the time to refine. Even if he did, he would be refining the building foundation dawn instead. For low-level dawn, he would just go find someone else to refine it for him. As of now, he even disdained refining a true elemental Dan, which was already a relatively high-level Dan. If anyone knew that Chen Xiang had such thoughts regarding such a precious Dan, they would definitely curse him to death. Wu Qianqian was exactly one of the best candidates. She had a fire spirit, and the dawn refined by her were definitely not low in quality. If she spent a little more effort, it would not be a problem for her to refine 5 dawn in a single try. Qianqian, can you refine other high-grade spirit-level dawn? Chen Xiang asked. Wu Qianqian shook her head. This is my limit, however, I will work hard. Wait for me to refine 5 true elemental dawn with 1 set of herbs, then I'll help you again in refining. Chen Xiang chatted for a while with Wu Qianqian. He shared his own alchemy experience with her, and moreover, he had also given her 100 set of ingredients for refining the true elemental dawn. No matter how many you refine with 1 set of herbs, you will get 1 and leave the rest to me. Help me refine dawn. This reward should be satisfactory. Chen Xiang laughed and said, he knew that Wu Qianqian, with regards to herbs, was lacking. However, Chen Xiang had a lot of those herbs. Very satisfactory. I'll try to refine more with 1 set. Wu Qianqian excitedly replied. It was not easy to find such a good job, and many alchemists, while refining dawn, would extract some as their rewards. In this job, she could not only refine true elemental dawn, she would also receive such a large reward, which would leave many third-level alchemists envious. These 3 days were to allow the disciples to relax before going to the southern wasteland. Beside Chen Xiang, the others were more or less somewhat tensed, because after they went inside, they would not only have to face the hidden danger inside the southern wasteland, they would also have to avoid getting hunted down by the powerful devil path martial artists. When all 10 partic 1p ants gathered together, the all-day all-smiles Yun Xiaodao had now turned very serious. Beside greeting with Chen Xiang, he had not spoken anything. It was evident that he was very tensed, and the others were also very much the same. Only Chen Xiang had an easy look. Gu Dongchen took out a huge flying disc and made Chen Xiang and the others walk upon it. After all of them were standing on it, he controlled the flying disc and started flying in high speed. This is a brilliant weapon, Chen Xiang exclaimed. There were a lot of spirit patterns on the flying disc, and all of them were very complex. After Chen Xiang had obtained the refiner's scroll, he had already done a little research regarding this. Yes, it is refined by the Empress of the Divine Weapon Heavenly Empire. That woman completely cheated me in the deal. Gu Dongchen had a trace of pained look, and this made Chen Xiang secretly laugh. He didn't expect Lu Menger, this famous beauty, to actually be a profiteer. Gu Dongchen and the others all knew Chen Xiang was in possession of the black tortoise adamantal armor, as well as a terrifying broadsword. In addition to the vermilion bird firewings, his life-saving and escaping ability could be described as first CLA. SS. That was why the other 9 were separated from Chen Xiang, who had the guts to move alone and hunt devil path martial artists. This flying disc speed was very quick, even many times faster than when Qin Xiang used the vermilion bird firewings. Qin Xiang could see Gu Dongchen had also consumed a lot of true qi. As for the rest, they were all sitting cross-legged on the flying disc, with eyes closed, evidently adjusting their state. The southern wasteland was in the south of the extreme martial sect. It was a mysterious zone, and in the heart of this region, even a martial artist at Gu Dongchen's level didn't dare to recklessly enter. The flying disc continuously flew for 3 days before it finally arrived at the top a high mountain. The crest of this mountain was flat, above which stood many people. It was clear that it was the better place to gather. Arrived, Gu Dongchen said, causing everyone to wake up from their cultivation. All of them have been somewhat tensed, and they could only adjust their state this way. Humph, big sect being the big sect, is actually the last one to arrive. A cold snort came over. It was Tang Yichao from the true martial sect. Last time, he was almost killed by Qin Xiang, so when he saw Qin Xiang, his slaughter chi soared. As Qin Xiang and the others came down from the flying disc, they saw other sect's disciples, accompanied by their respective sects taik. OONS. Qin Xiang immediately saw Lu Menger, and what made him surprised was that, among the group of disciples behind her, Xue Xianxian and Ling Yulan were both present. Xue Xianxian wore a black outfit, while Ling Yulan wore a black armor. Both of them appeared to be domineering as they saluted towards Qin Xiang. The dean of the Danxiang Taoyuan hadn't arrived, however. Hua Xiangyue came. In fact, she was leading a team, and from this, it was clear how high her position was in the Danxiang Taoyuan. However, this seductive and charming stunner didn't even glance nor greet with Qin Xiang, as if she didn't recognize him. Qin Xiang secretly heaved a sigh. If Hua Xiangyue had greeted him, it might have garnered some trouble, and after all, both Xue Xianxian and Ling Yulan both were. The man leading the Beast Martial Sect looked like a minotaur. He was the new dean of the Beast Martial Sect. The Lotus Island's master looked gentle and refined with his white robes and fair skin. That graceful appearance even made many other sects' female disciples occasionally glance over. As for the Proud Sword Sect, it was led by a middle-aged man with extraordinary bearing. Although he wore simple garb, arrogance was briming from his body. A long sword was on his back, and to Qin Xiang's surprise, among the disciples behind him, there was a familiar face. It was Gan Zhujian, the disciple whom Qin Xiang had a conflict when he went to the Frozen Sword City. Yun Xiaodao, Zhu Rong and the others winked and smiled towards Qin Xiang when they saw Ling Yulan and Xue Xianxian. Each one of them got secretly jealous of Qin Xiang, and they were now totally convinced with what Qin Xiang had said before. Xue Xianxian was indeed his fiancée, and Ling Yulan was his sworn sister. The Icewind Valley's disciples were led by Lu Menger. It was already a well-known fact that the relation between the deans of the Icewind Valley and the divine weapon Heavenly Empire, since the ancient times, had been very good. That was why everyone didn't feel that it was strange. Everybody, all of you don't want to lose to the devil path, right? Otherwise, each of our sects will be required to give them some resources, and if the devil path sects are allowed to grow, it will then become a threat to us. I don't think I need to explain further. I think all of you understand it. Gu Dongchen said in a clear voice. Qin Xiang's strength is obvious to everyone, and the reason why he had enmities with some sect's disciples was not something intentional. It was all because he was compelled. This point you should be clearer than me. In short, he cannot stay with us. Last time in the Frozen Sword City, he had annihilated 100-man squad of Devil Yang clan, including 2 5th-level, 3rd-level, 2nd-level and 1st-level true martial realm martial artists. All in all, he had annihilated a team of more than 10. The Devil Yang clan hates him to the bone, and being together with us will only be cumbersome. The Proud Sword Sect's dean coldly said. Although he said so, many disciples could not help but gulp down a cold lump. Qin was truly worthy to be an influential figure. One man had actually annihilated so many,